This is Dave Gregor from Morta Skuld, and I'll see you in the Tampa Morgue.
What's up? This is Tony, and thanks as always for listening to the Tampa Morgue. I am joined as always by my co-host, Mr. Ed Webb. What's up, dude?
Mr. Anderson, what's going on, brother?
Nothing much, man. We've been off for 11 days, but now we have a busy weekend.
That's my fault.
And it's been, what's the Morta Sound update before we get to our guest today?
One song. I got one song left.
One song left.
Yep, and then I go back in for other things that I cannot talk about, but will be talked about at some point. So it will be epic.
But if you message me on the Instagram page, anybody, I will give you the information for $20. Yes. Yeah, so no, Ed's been with Monstrosity and Morta Sound doing that. And
back Monday for more.
Back Monday,
shenanigans.
last week we had 11 days ago we had Dawn of the Dead from Nunslaughter on for 3 hours, which was pretty crazy. We actually talked to Don for 5 hours that night. And, Don was awesome. Fucking great guy. Great episode. I thought one of my favorites that we've done so far, and tonight we're joined by a dude who's been around for a long time, man. And you actually heard the opening track. It was Rotting Ways off of the 1993 album Dying Remains that came out on Def Records, the subsidiary of Peaceville Records. And man, we are joined by Dave of Morta Skuld. How you doing, man?
Good, man. Thank you for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
No, man, we totally. Yeah, it's our pleasure. I see you got the Packers shirt on. We had the dudes from Morbid Saint on a few weeks ago, and they were sporting the same stuff. So
got to support the home team, man.
Yeah, we had Pat and Jim on. So and you're Pat's actually cool. Friends with those guys, right?
Yeah, I know Pat. Jim, I think he just joined not long ago because they had a lineup change. So I've been talking to Jim. I don't know him, but I know Pat and Jay, and then Bob. So I know I like the bass player, the guitar player, and the singer. I know those guys the best.
Yeah, Jim left for a long period of time. He opened up a haunted house over in Sheboygan, and and you're another Wisconsin guy, right? You're Milwaukee. Were you born in Milwaukee?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So, and I know you're about the same age as us. I think a couple of years older than me, like Ed. So when you were growing up in Milwaukee, it was what, 60s and 70s? What was it, not music wise, but what was it like growing up there?
Well, I was born in 66, so that makes me 57. Just simpler times, just real simple. Milwaukee, I feel like Milwaukee's always kind of been like that. Until recently, I think it's kind of growing a little bit more, turning into some, maybe a little different type city. But just simple, easy living, 60s, 70s. You got your disco era and all the weird stuff that kind of came in and out of those decades.
Yeah, and you were actually introduced pretty young to music too. I had read you had your mom was playing records around you like Supertramp and Barbra Streisand as a kid.
Oh God, yeah. Oh man, talk about torture. Yeah, I was like, oh man, we got to listen to that. Yeah, Jesus Christ Superstar too, the soundtrack. She listened to that religiously. Just all this stuff. Oh man, you're gonna subject me to that? So so she would just sing along with the records, and I don't know if I just kind of, I want to say inherited that or just, I don't know, but because I started listening to soundtracks, and that's what really got me, was the soundtracks. And I remember the first one I got was the very first Star Trek movie that came out, the motion picture, and I got that, and I was listening to that, and then there was another older classic, I don't know if you guys remember, called The Black Hole, and that was a classic at the time, especially for the graphics and everything. You're like, oh, you look now and you're like, wow, but at the time it was cutting edge.
Great movie.
Absolutely. So a dark movie. But I started doing stuff like that before I started listening to, I think Queen was one of my first records. The Police. Zenyatta Mondatta was probably one of my first records by them. Love that band. And then Queen and, Foreigner, Styx too was another big one with me. So yeah, I just kind of grew up listening to the vinyls and then singing along to them, I guess, is where I started.
Because 70s and 60s, right? It was the big disco movement too. You had ABBA, Bee Gees, Donna Summers. I mean, what else? Casey, Sunshine Band.
And Kiss. Kiss did their disco. And Casey and Sunshine. Oh my God, they were humongous at the time. Yeah, huge.
You also had that punk movement back then too, with the Ramones and Television and Sex Pistols and stuff.
Yeah, Sex Pistols, Dead Kennedys. That's why somebody asked me in a previous interview, they're I told them, I said, I feel like I got the best because I got a little bit of the 60s, I got the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. It's I was around when all this stuff was coming through, especially the punk movement. I was in high school and I was like, what's this? I'm like, this is awesome. I'm a big Sex Pistols fan. So that all kind of came through. And then when that went out, and then you had the hardcore movement and then the death metal movement and the thrash move. I mean, I was there for all of them. And it's just really cool to reflect back on that and go, wow, I was there right when it first came, I'm not 30 going, oh yeah, I just started listening to this stuff now, so to speak.
No, that's why the music, the early death metal is as good as it is, because we got to live through the best era of music on the planet, period. Even the Beatles. I mean, the harmonies, the way they played. I mean, we lived through the best. If you look from what you said, even jazz growing up, the early jazz, it
Steely
was such an
Dan.
era. Yeah, it was
Oh
such a
God.
such a era of time. When you grow up listening to that, even country. My dad used to listen to Larry Gatlin and Kenny Rogers, and but
Sure.
he also liked rock. So it was
Yeah.
like the full spectrum. And then when you, as a kid, pick up a guitar or whatever,
Yep.
it's all there. And you write. That's how we invented what we invented.
I agree.
Yeah, and I know, Dave, you were also really into who was one of my favorite artists, and I've seen the guy so many times, Alice Cooper. You were a big Alice Cooper guy,
Oh,
right? I mean,
huge Alice Cooper. And here's the one thing that's weird. I didn't get into his rock stuff so much. It was the new wave stuff is what really caught me first. The Flush the Fashion, the Special Forces, Zipper Catches Skin. That stuff is where I was like, oh, I mean, I like $1 Billion Babies and stuff. You know, I like that stuff. But then when the new wave stuff came in, it just really caught me. I was just sold. And then when he went back to the rock stuff, I started liking a lot of that stuff too. And even the later stuff like Brutal Planet, Dragon's Town, I really enjoyed that. And then the last record he put out was
it's
a
great.
Detroit rock.
Detroit Stories, right? Detroit
Yeah,
Stories. Like,
great record. My girlfriend saw him last year and she's like, he was awesome. She goes, he was running around that stage like Ace Frehley open. And she keeps telling me, she goes, God, what's wrong with Ace Frehley? And I go, what do you mean? She goes, it's like he's dead. He's staying. She goes, but Alice Cooper's all over the place, and then she bought me a Alice Cooper book. It's like Alice at 75 book for Christmas. So love Alice Cooper.
Alice Cooper's great. You're also in the Styx, obviously.
Scorpions. Just saw them last year. Scorpions. I haven't seen them in a while, but yeah, that last record was. I'm a huge Michael Schenker fan too.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. So UFO too, I would take it, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I love that. Michael's last 4 solo records. I love every one of them, like front to back.
And not to jump ahead, but I will for a second. I know your influences. You were a big you were Vandenberg, Red Beach.
Yeah.
Randy Rhoads, of course.
Yeah. Randy Rhoads for sure.
Shankner, like you said. Do you remember the first record you actually owned?
I mean, like record, like of all time?
As a kid, like when you were a kid, the first tape you had or cassette, tape or record or 8-track or whatever.
Well, I remember one Christmas, I asked my mom. I was really the Ozzy solo record, Blizzard of Oz came out, and I think I was maybe a freshman in high school, and we were at a Pizza Hut with all my friends, and my buddy put the song in the jukebox, and I was like, "What's this?" And he goes, "You don't know this?" And I go, "No." And he goes, "This is Ozzy," which was in Black Sabbath, and I was a huge Black Sabbath fan. So for that Christmas, my mom bought me all the Black Sabbath albums from start to wherever they were at that time on cassette. So all these tiny little, wrapped cassettes underneath the tree, and probably I think it was either Sabotage or Volume 4, probably.
And you actually saw Ozzy, right? You saw him with Randy on the Diary tour?
Yeah, it was 80. Was it 81?
82 at the Mecca, probably.
Thank you. Wow, thank you. My memory, yeah. 82, yeah. And I was just in there watching hockey last week, and we saw Tesla, and I was like, God, this place is so small. But I go back to my memory, and I remember this place being so huge.
You played there, didn't you?
Yeah, with the Metal Fest. Yeah, I think you had a Metal Fest there. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so that's what I thought. And like your child, I don't want to bring up anything too crazy, but I do want to mention it because the way you write lyrics and a lot of the Morta Skuld themes, you actually had kind of a rough childhood growing up, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so that does play into a lot of your like I said, the lyrics eventually in some of the albums later on.
Yeah. I mean it's like anything else. I just I didn't. I mean, not trying to have people feel sorry for me or nothing, but yeah, I grew up without a dad. Had a stepdad that was very abusive. My mom was very abusive. My grandfather was abusive. So yeah, there was just a lot of a lot coming at me as a young kid. And I think the music was the only thing I had to escape besides, getting plowed, drinking beer, going to a party, getting plowed, and then somebody throwing me on my front lawn the next day. And, all the neighbors looking out like, oh, there's a Gregor kid on the front lawn again, But the music was all I had. And I really wanted to get into it a little bit more. And I always wanted to be a musician. But just at the young age, I just didn't have tried playing guitar, it just didn't catch at that point. So, but yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of the anger part, or the, especially when I was going through my divorce and fighting custody for my kids, and just As Humanity Fades, there's a lot of songs about that in there, and Even for All Eternity and Surf. It's just all about certain aspects of my life that I went through, and just I'm like, I got to get this out somehow. And running around being an angry kid for 20 some years, it just after a while you got to grow up, and I just got exhausted with being angry all the time. But I think in the back of my mind there's still a little bit of anger there, towards the way I was raised.
So you use music as a therapy, basically, and which a lot of us do growing up.
For sure.
Yeah, and so at the age of 16 and 17, you were already sneaking into bars at that time, right, to watch bands play? Because your area was what, at that time period, mostly cover bands, or the old, like, I guess you would say the cock rock bands?
Yeah, there were a lot of it wasn't not glam, but they were like the hair guys. The hair was real large, and everybody had to wear the spandex and stuff. But there was a local thrash band called Realm that was very, very popular, and they would play the clubs too. And what was really common at the time is for a lot of bands to do is they would play a bunch of covers, but they would mix like 4, maybe 5 originals in there throughout the night. But then they would surround them with covers. So that was like the standard thing. And yeah, I was like 16, and there was a band, it was Realm, and a band called Raven Bitch from Janesville that I really loved. And because I had their 4-song demo on cassette, and I was like, oh, I really love these guys. So I'd sneak in these bars and like watch these bands and go like, wow, like this is kind of what I want to do. Even though I was 16 or 17, whatever it was. But then by the time I turned 18, the laws changed and I got grandfathered in. So I was able to go out to the bars in high school where the other kids, if they didn't get grandfathered in, they couldn't. So, but yeah, but for quite a while, yeah, I was sneaking in. There was a couple West Dallas bars here that I would sneak in and watch Realm or whoever was playing.
Yeah, and also, do you remember the first show you ever attended?
The first show I ever saw was Styx Paradise Theater tour. That was the first concert I ever went to.
Okay, and you actually got more like into the heavier stuff, right? From actually a girl you were hanging out with, her brother was playing a lot of like the heavier shit around you, like maybe like the metal churches, the Exodus, Metallica, Sabbath.
Man, you are doing your research. My God.
we try not to waste your time when we bring you on.
No, you're digging deep, man. Wow. Like this is stuff I haven't even thought of in many years. So my hat's off to you. Yeah, I was dating this girl. We were working at a restaurant together. I was dating this girl, and her brother was he was out there, but like he lived in the basement, and they were odd family. But they were redoing the house and the doors. Every door in the house was taken off because they were doing something. And he took her brother took the doors and he made a room with the doors in the basement, So it was kind of odd, and you'd come in there and it'd be all kind of dark, and he had a big knife and like a spool, a big spool table, like we used to do back in the day for tables. And it's like, what's with this kid? And he was playing Merciful Fate. And I was like, what's this? And he's like, you don't know what this is? And I was like, no. And he's like, Merciful Fate. And I was like, oh. And yeah, so it just took off from there. That and Exodus, Bonded by Blood. Those are the 2 records he played all the time. And I was like, okay, I got to get these records, man. And then as soon as I started getting those records, I just started looking more and more into the heavier stuff. And I mean, I had always looked at our local record store, because back then you had to really look and search to find bands. And so, what was it? Macaulay Shanker, Robin McCulley had a project, Grand Prix. So I found them there. And then I found Billy Sheehan's Talus. And, so you really, really had to look for it. And I was really into finding these bands that nobody ever heard of before. But when her and I were dating, and her brother and I really spent a lot of time together, and he just really turned me on to a lot of this stuff, especially Merciful Fate. And I was like, dude, forget about it, man. Don't break the oath, Melissa. Because
that would be that time period, right? You probably figure Exodus was like 85, Bonded, Metal Church, maybe The Dark 86, self-titled was 85.
Yeah. I'd say probably between like 84 and 86. Yeah, easily. Maybe, probably even, yeah. No, I think you're right. Yeah, 85, 86. Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense. But then eventually 86, you also joined the Marine Corps.
Yes.
which you spent like 3 years there.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I went in the Marine Corps, and it was funny too because it was over this girl. Like it was just the bizarrest thing, man. Like we're all because we were kind of a really tight knit bunch. The rest, us working at the restaurant together, and like for some reason on weekends we all hung out together. Don't ask me why, we just did. But we would like go to the bowling alley, and suck down the beers and bowl. And so we're all hanging out. And one day I was late or something, and I come in and I see her, meaning my girlfriend at the time, sitting on my friend's lap, and kind of like, back in the day, oh, you're wearing my jacket. She was like wearing his jacket. I was like, something going on here? I'm like, I missed something? And yeah, sure as shit, they had started seeing each other. And I'm like, well, this is bizarre. When are you guys going to tell me? So I had a lot of emotions, and just especially with the way I was raised in a lot of chaos. So I really didn't have a very clear view, or I just didn't have a very clear way of thinking about things. So my thing is I had my sister's boyfriend at the time enlisted in the Marines, and he had come home off of boot camp, and it's like, wow, this guy looks in shape. It's like he's got his act together. I said, maybe I should try it. And then, of course, out of the, I don't want to say the hurt feelings or whatever you want to call them, just upset, pissed, whatever. I was like, forget this chick. I'm going to go in the service. I'll show her, So, so I went in the Marine Corps, enlisted, did 3 years. And then at that point came out and came back home.
It was about 86 to 90 you were in there? Around?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. And you also, you went to Japan, right? You did get stationed in Japan for a little while.
Yeah, I was stationed over there for a year.
How did you get out? Was it like a pain in the ass to get out, or was it one of those one of those chances where they gave you, what was it? They had too many people. They would give you a chance to
early out. Yeah, early out. Yeah. Yeah, I took the early out because I was like, I don't know, really wasn't for me. Japan was hard. Like I said, I was just in the frame of mind and just the way that my family was, and I'd call home and there was nothing positive about the phone calls, and it just got me really more and more homesick, and I just wanted to go home. And I had a really good, I'm very blessed to run into this guy, but a good friend of mine, Danny, like I said, I come to the island, I move in the barracks. I'm like, I'm freaking out, man. I mean, this place smells like sewage. It's just a culture shock. And I hear somebody playing, I don't know if it was Iron Maiden, Number of the Beast, or if it was Fate's Warning. I heard something coming from the barracks. I'm like, what the hell? So I run into the barracks and stuff, knock on a dude's, like, they had like these little like dressers that you would like put a little blanket, for privacy. So he'd knock on the door, and he's like, what's up? Hey, what's this? And a lot of the guys, because Japan was noted for its stereo equipment, so you could walk out and buy a full system, like cheap as hell. So a lot of guys in their tiny little cubicles with no insulation would have these huge stereos. And I mean, guys would go with cranking these stereo wars, and this metal versus this metal. And so I met him and found out he was a singer back home in Pennsylvania. And him and I just became really, 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 really good friends. And he pretty much helped me get through that period. So, and unfortunately he passed away a couple of years ago, but I always miss the guy. But yeah, it was great meeting him, and we shared our love for music. And I always told him I wanted to be a musician. He's like, well, dude, when you get out, just do it. So, I was happy to have him in my life and that support behind me.
And you did get back into music too, because so like you said, you tried playing guitar at like 15 and 16, but just couldn't stick with it. But you basically started actually playing later, like 21, 22?
Yeah, it was like, how was it? So I was roughly about 19. I was in service. I think I came out. I was roughly about 21, 22. When I had come home on leave though once, I went to the Conservatory of Music and I took a class or a course, a rhythm course. And then I went back in and then came back out and took the second rhythm course. And then, then from there, I just started, I didn't want to learn anybody else's material, that's what everybody would do. And I was like, I don't want to do this. I want to learn I think I got frustrated. If I couldn't pick up a riff or a part, I was like, forget it. I'm done. I get to a certain part, okay, forget it, And so with that frustration, I was like, forget it. I'm just going to write my own stuff, because how can I not play my own stuff? So yeah, it kind of went on from there. And then, so about 22.
22. And then you also, which kind of like moved you from like you said, like more of the metal churches and those kind of bands, but you also worked at a music warehouse, right? Where you were pulling records, and that's where you would actually come across an album that I know had influenced you a lot, which was the Death record.
Yep. Death Leprosy. Absolutely. Yeah. I was working at I can't remember the name of the place. I can't remember the name of the place. It was in our downtown area, very, very Radio Doctors, very well-known record store, very well-known. And they had this basement, and they just had nothing but cassette tapes. I mean, just as far as the eye could see. And CD was just starting to come in, but only the New Age labels had CDs. That was it. None of the metal. So the metal was on cassette. I remember pulling this cassette for a store, and it was a Death Leprosy, and he was like, dude, you should check that out. You should check that out. And I was like, all right, and I checked it out, and I was like, wow, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Because before Morta Skuld came about, I was with a bunch of different guys, and we were doing like a hardcore crossover, kind of like MOD kind of type stuff. And some of the guys in the band, including myself, weren't very talented. We were very young, just starting out. And I had really wanted that level, like really bad. And I would just hammer these guys, and I was out of the Marine Corps not very long too. So I was very, I'm going to hammer these guys, and probably said some not nice things. And I remember we went into this studio for some reason. We drove to Minneapolis for some stupid reason to record when there's plenty of studios right in our hometown. And I remember on the way home, I just hammered these guys because we sucked. And I'm hammering these guys. And by the time I got home, they were like, forget you. We're out of here, And Jason Hellman and I were just looking at each other and we're like, forget it. Let's just start a death metal band. It was like, all right.
How did you meet Jason? I was going to ask you, because you were with him for a long time.
Yeah. Well, it was weird because when I came out of the Marine Corps, I had stumbled on this one. His name is Miguel, and bigger, kind of a heavier set guy, but just I can't explain it, man. He had this weird charisma about him, like he could talk anybody into anything. And when I met him when I was in service, when I was home, and he's like, "Hey, let's start a band." So he's running around telling everybody we're this band, but we have no members. I still really wasn't able to play. And so he's running around telling everybody we have this band. So I'm like, whatever. And he's like, no, I got this bass player. I'm telling you. Okay. So then he had been hanging out with Jason before myself. And he took me over to Jason's house. And I'll never forget it because I think Jason must have been like 15. And he was just coming home from, he was a dishwasher at a local Italian place. And he was coming home and just reeked like food. And, I look at the guy and he walks in and just starts taking his clothes off and runs from the bedroom into the shower. And I was like, who the hell was that? And Miguel's like, that's Jason. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And he goes, no. Excuse me. So after Jason and I, we started talking. And then, after I got a Marine Corps, Miguel's like, well, I'll sing. And Jason, well, I'll play bass. I'll play guitar. And then after that, it was just history. Jason was with me for a very long time.
Jason played with Dr. Shrinker too, didn't he? And Accidental Suicide. But you guys had the band. You had a singer at that time, and then you actually removed the singer from the band because you guys just weren't satisfied with him. And then you guys did a song where you switched all the instruments around.
So the very first band with Miguel and Jason, Jeff and Chuck, when we came back, that kind of disbanded. And then we met these, I don't know how we met these kids, but somehow we met these other young kids. And it was Jesse Rofritz, Kevin Zeitler, and Lee Halverson. And we met these guys. And so they were kind of like the second incarnation of the crossover band that we were doing. So it still wasn't Morta Skuld yet. And we kind of started developing the material. And I noticed these guys really, even though they were like 16, 17, they really knew, they kind of knew how to play, and they weren't messing around, even though they were teens. So we kind of, I don't know who had the idea, but somebody in the band had this idea where we're going to do this song and we're all going to switch instruments. And I was like, all right, whatever. So everybody switched to their instrument and I was like kind of stuck. I'm like, well, what do I do? And they're like, well, here, you can do the vocals. I was like, all right, not very good at it. And so yeah, so we had the song, we did that, and we would have at Jason, we practiced in Jason's mom's basement, and we also lived there. And we would have people over every practice. It was crazy. It was always like, case of beer, 12-pack of beer. I mean, everybody just, it was kind of just like a basement show every rehearsal. And so we did the switching of the song, and one of the guys there was like, you should be the singer. And I was just like, we got somebody, We weren't happy. Now, and it's funny because at the time, Lee's voice was not that good. Later on, he went on to be in horror specs and stuff, and his voice developed, better to the point where he became a good singer. But at the time, it wasn't cutting it for what we wanted to do. So at that point, it was like, hey, we're going to cut ties with the guy. And then it, so to speak, it just kind of shifted me into the singer guitar player spot. And I was like, I don't know how to do this. I really don't. So I had a help of a local friend of mine. We really enjoyed what he was doing. And he was like, well, I'll help you out. I'll write some lyrics for you, or I'll help you write the lyrics. We'll take these songs that was done by a singer and turn them into something that can be sung and played to. And then we literally went into the studio probably like 2 weeks later with Eric Reif to do the Gory Departure demo.
Was that Brian from Viogression?
Yes.
Okay. And you guys eventually chose the name Morta Skuld, which basically which whoever doesn't know, Morta Skuld is like Greek for death.
Yes.
Greek, yeah. So, and then Skuld is in Norse mythology.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of weird though. If you put the two together though, it kind of like if you just Google Morta Skuld meaning, it's kind of about the fates. It's kind of like about the beginning of life to the end of life. And Brian came up with that. He had a list of names, and he's like, I'm like, that's stupid. I don't like that. And I mean, there's like 5 or 6 names. They were just bad. And then it was like Morta Skuld. I'm like, that's it. That's the name. And he's like, you want that? And I'm like, that's what I want. So.
And you guys had the logo was done by Chad Hensel?
Yes, the very, yes, the very first, off the demos, I want to say Jason Hellman drew that logo on the demos. But then once we, got signed and started doing Peaceful, that was Chad Hensel from Dr. Shrinker, yeah. And you can see it too. I mean, if you put up their logo and our logo, you can really tell it's his work, especially with the S's.
Yeah. And you guys, in your first show, was that at a bowling alley, or was that one of you guys were playing bowling alleys and stuff like that, right? So was that one of your first?
No, the first show was, which is really ironic. It's really close to where I was born in West Dallas, and it was called Castelia Dance Hall. It was a dance hall. They did like, kids, taught kids how to dance. They had kind of a decent stage in there. And I don't know, somehow that was our first show to be put on. And then after we had a lineup change and went into the Prolong the Agony phase, then we were playing like bowling alleys, and, it was crazy though, man. I mean, shit, I'm selling cassettes out of my trunk of my car and, living a pretty good life in 1991.
And those in that area, right, Sheboygan, and you were like what, an hour out of there where you're from. That scene there, it really came alive. The late '80s, early '90s, because you guys were Croatian Hall.
Yeah, Croatian Hall was huge, man. That place was an old church. They turned it into kind of a venue. Just amazing. Like anybody could play. I mean, we played there with Acrofet, which was a big '80s thrash band from here. Realm, I'm pretty sure Morbid Saint too. But we just played with all kinds of bands up there, and it was great. You just put on a show, and like 300-400 kids. You didn't have to ask anybody for their firstborn or a blood sample or any of that. It was just boom. Everybody just came together, and it was like this. It was a very, very good time for the scene.
It was a different time period too, right? Because you would only have a couple bands. You wouldn't have like 15 bands on one show back then. It was everyone. No internet, so everybody wanted to go to the shows. It was not like a million reasons why people wouldn't go to shows and shit.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, maybe 3 bands tops. It was like we always wanted to do less is more. Especially back then, you didn't have to have like 20 bands on a bill to get 50 people in the door. I mean, we had like 300-400 kids show up like every show, regardless. It was madness, and I wish I would have stopped to smell the roses a little bit more back then. To soak that more in.
And me and Ed always talk about that. Like back then it was a whole different world, and everyone was putting out demos and stuff, and everyone was excited. Ed, we like now, even when you play shows, even in the Tampa area, there's like 9 bands on the show, and
Oh, yeah.
we know why they're doing it, because they need to get. You're hoping everyone's girlfriends come. You're trying to get people in the venues now.
How they always do. Well, again, we've talked about this on other podcasts. We had a place called the Sunset Club, where the bands who became the big bands were there, and you'd see the flyer and you would see Amon, Executioner, Ravage, and like there are 4 bands on the bill. And now if you looked at that bill, it would be Deicide, Atheist, Obituary. I mean,
Right.
you know what I mean? But back then they were playing all together in a little tiny club that might have held, man, if that held 80 people,
Yeah.
I would be surprised. And, and that's how they did it. I mean, you would see, I see them all the time, Nasty Savage with like Sabotage, and you're like, when they were nobody, and now,
Right.
but they were big draws because people were like, there's nothing like that out here. Cause there weren't, that's the problem with today. Everybody has 16 bands that they're in, and that's the problem. So it's like, and now it's not even cool because
I never understood it. Ed. I never understood it. I'm like, why wouldn't you stick with this? And yeah, it's a different way of thinking now. It's a different time we live in.
Well,
like
I was guilty of it. I was guilty of it because I was doing a couple bands at one time, and a couple's okay if you can, and if they're completely different bands,
right?
You know what I mean?
Right.
But if you're playing in 4 death metal bands,
right? It's like
what's the point? I mean,
that makes sense.
So you mentioned in 1990, we actually know Eric Greif. Well, we knew Eric Greif. Ed was managed by him at one time, and I knew Eric from when Ed was playing with Massacre and stuff. But in 1990, you guys entered the studio in Gurnee, Illinois, right, to record the Gory Departure record, which was the 4-song demo. And you guys recorded that on a 24 track?
I don't know what the board was, but it was done at Opus Studios or Wave Digital. It's kind of one and the same. Just complete professional studio. I mean, we walked in and we thought we were like rock stars, man. The board and everything was just top notch and professional, man. It was an awesome first experience, but it really was kind of a humbling experience because we're like, oh crap, like we really can't play that well, like we really got to start practicing more,
And with Eric, can you tell us how you got involved with Eric?
Eric kind of, how can I say it? He was living in Milwaukee, and I don't know how directly I got in contact with him, but I just know, he was doing like the Viogression, and he was working with Dr. Shrink. He was just working with all these different, he was working with my Kent, which was drummer off the first 4 records. He was a band called Sinister, so he was working with those guys. Eric just seemed to want to work with everybody. And so we got wind of it. I contacted him and I was just like, hey, you think you'd be interested in producing? Because he did the Viogression. I liked what he did with their first demo. I was like, hey, you want to do our demo? And then he was like, yeah, sure. But the crazy part about Eric is I don't know how to explain it, but he had this weird, like he kind of played everybody off of everybody, I don't know if it was to drum up cash or what it was, but it was just funny because he'd be like, hey man, these guys just put out a demo, man. It smokes. You guys gotta put out a demo and top that. And then he'd go to the next band, like, dude, Morta Skuld just put out this demo. You guys gotta top that. So he would,
play the
and it worked because we were all like super hungry and we're like, oh yeah, we gotta make this demo the best, and we gotta outdo these guys, and that's just kind of how it started with our relationship with Eric.
He did the spoken parts on the intro and the Preacher of Lies, which we're actually going to play in a few minutes here. He was doing the voice on that.
Yeah. He came up with all the samples and the voice. There was nothing like to pick from. It wasn't like you could just lift something out of the air. It was like we had to actually make it by hand, or so to speak, or we had to create this. And he had this vision. I mean, we were like, whatever, sure, cool, But he had this vision of like what he really wanted to hear in these songs. And I think there was even a track where Jason's mom, I think she's on Preacher Lies too. So he would just throw somebody in the booth, and he'd be like, just say something, do something, or I want you to do this or do that. And so a lot of all the samples, and on Prolong the Agony too, that was all That was all. I had an idea for an intro for Prolong the Agony, and it was funny because I was sitting around at a friend's house, and we're like out in his backyard, and I don't know if we were smoking weed. I don't know what we were doing, and some local guy from the neighborhood that everybody thought was a messed up monkey because he was in Vietnam and all that, and came back, and he started talking about like, yeah, man, I walked through the Valley of Death, and and started just saying all this stuff, and I like remembered it, and I was repeating it to Eric, and so we were writing it down, and then we started changing some phrases and stuff like that, and then he went in to narrate the whole thing.
And who actually did the Screaming Skull artwork for the demo on the cover?
The cover for Prolonged Agony was done by a bunch of local guys. They did the Vile Aggression cover as well. And I think they did a couple others. I think they did the Sinister cover too. It was Dominic Marino. It was him and his brother Paul. They were
you guys used him for a few things, Dominic.
Huh?
You guys used Dominic for a few covers.
Yeah. I don't know about a few. Prolong and As Humanity Fades. Yeah, As Humanity Fades, that was him too.
Okay, yeah. So we're actually going to play a track off of the 1990 Gory Departure demo. We're going to play Preacher of Lies. And so that lineup was Kevin on guitar, Jason on bass, you on guitar and vocals, and then Jesse on drums. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay, we're going to play that song now. We're going to play Preacher of Lies off the 1990 demo, and we'll be right back on the Tampa Morgue right after this track. you go. That was Gory Departure off the 1990 Morta Skuld demo. That was Preacher of Lies. But yeah, so that was your, that's when you first were in the studio, and that was, you said that was kind of, it was weird, right? Being like, I think I had heard you say before that it was weird being put into like, when you're in the studio, you're under the microscope, right? And you're not in that same room just jamming and drowning each other out, kind of, and like everything is like scrutinized a little bit, I guess you'd say.
Yeah, because you're isolated. All your tracks are isolated, and I remember the clean guitar part in Preacher of Lies. We're like, well, we're all looking around like, where's that? It's like, well, we can't play that right now because that's another track that we have to do. So I was really like, like I was very lost. I'm like, and at the time we didn't think to do reference tracks. We didn't think to do scratch tracks. We didn't think to do any of that. We just went in and started recording. And so, it was like, oh crap, like what about this part? And so there were definitely some mistakes made on that demo, but I think it was just the learning process. We were learning as we were going, and Eric obviously knew more about what he was doing than what we were doing.
And after the Gory Departure demo, Kevin and Jesse would leave the band.
Yes.
And you would bring in Jason O'Connell on guitar, and then Jeff Jaeger got involved also. How did you get involved with those guys?
Well, Jason Hellman was really good friends with Jason O'Connell, and he was like, "Hey, I got this guy," and I was like, "I don't know, man. I don't know about this guy. I never met him before, It's like, well, we're gonna have him audition." I said, what? It's like, okay, fine. So he comes over, brings his stuff, and like doesn't even play any music, and Jason's like, yeah, he's in the band, and I'm like, he hasn't even played any music yet, So it was kind of weird. And then Jeff Jaeger, he had been just kind of, how can I say it? He got really screwed. He was in Vile Aggression. It was his band and this and that, and then they kind of raw deal like Bret Hart, the Montreal screw job. They kind of they really screwed him. Well, they were grooming his younger brother to take his place the whole time, and it was just like, wow, like that's so that's kind of how the story went. And then Jeff was without a band, so Jeff we liked his drumming. We were friends with those guys, and we were like, hey, we need a drummer. Would you be interested? And Jeff's like, no problem, So Jeff just kind of just fit in real easy with us.
You guys entered in August of 1990. You guys entered the studio again to record the Prolong the Agony, which was 4 songs on that. And actually, did Jeff write most of the lyrics on that? Because you guys changed lyrical direction on that from the Gory Departure record.
Yeah. So Brian DeNeff had helped me with the lyrics on Gory Departure quite a bit. And then when it came to the Prolong thing, I was kind of in a really, I don't know, we were really influenced by, a lot of the Florida bands and, Morbid Angel and, the likes of that. And we were just, Monstrosity and, we were just seeing just what everybody was doing. And I was kind of like, I don't know, it's just young and stupid. And I was just like, oh yeah, let's like write, satanic lyrics. And I don't know anything about satanic lyrics, but I'm like, and Jeff was like, that kind of goes against my religion. And it was like, okay, all right, and we just kind of butted heads a little bit. And he was like, well, I'll tell you what. He's like, you want to write this, but how about we write what the feeling would be or what the experience would be behind it instead of like writing it more as like a glorification, I guess. And so I said, all right, and I know Feast from Within was a song that he had written. It was not music wise, but they had a song called Feast from Within. And so we kind of took the title and he wrote the lyrics. So yeah, so for those 3 songs, he did have, I want to say, I think he wrote most of them, if not all of them.
And Jeff left the band in 91?
Yes.
And was that the time period I had, there was you guys kind of had that hostile environment, right? At the rehearsals and shit back in the early days. Was that around that time period around there? Yeah.
It was, I didn't get along with Jason O'Connell really well either. So him and I always butted heads constantly. He was a very good guitar player. He was young and very cocky, and we just, I wasn't as good. And so maybe, I don't know if I was more humble. I don't know about humble, but our personalities just didn't mesh real well. And then Jeff and I just had a lot of disagreements, and he was just like, it's time for me to leave, and so he left, and then we were like, okay, well now we got to find somebody.
Was it getting to the point of if you guys have any physical, we've all me and Ed have been into some, not with each other, but we've actually had we had a band situation where we had like the band basically get ready to pit fight in the back of a venue before back in the day. So did you guys have any of those fun moments?
I would say later on, Jason Hellman and I kind of got a little physical, nothing too crazy. But Jason, not with anybody else, but there was a lot more verbal. A lot of verbal, fuck you, and we were all young and stupid, So if somebody disagreed about a riff, or they didn't like something, and then you took it personal, and then and it just kind of escalated sometimes. So it was a little turbulent at times.
And you and Jason, like I said, were together for a long time, so that shit's going to happen eventually. I mean, it's just how it goes. So 1992, you guys were part of a 5-band split with Dr. Shrinker, Phantasm, Ripped, and Blessed Sickness. But you also played. You guys were a regular actually. I think you guys played Milwaukee Metal Fest like 8 times.
Yeah.
But was the first show you guys played? Was that at the Central Park Ballroom with Cancer, Cannibal Corpse, Devastation, Deicide, and there's a shitload of bands. Demolition Hammer. Was that the first one you guys played?
Oh, man, I'd have to look. I got my laminates over there. I don't even know what the order is, but it sounds about right. That sounds about right. My memory's not the greatest, But yeah, I think it sounds about right.
And was that so? You were dealing with Jack Koshik, right? And was that so? How did you meet? I actually dealt. We did. He did a Sun and Steel festival in Florida, which kind of went. It was a fucking mess. It was. We won't even like.
I get it.
It was crazy, man. But
I get it.
Well, when did you first meet Jack? And because you guys, like I said, you guys played 8 of those.
Oh yeah. Well, I met Jack. He used to own a small club called the Odd Rock, and back in the day, it was very popular, especially for touring bands. I think James Murphy was in. I can't remember the name of the band at the time.
Cancer?
No, it was way before that. It was it's one of his very first bands he was in, and he came through and played this club. It was probably like 89-ish. But that's how I met Jack, because he would bring really weird novelty acts like G.G. Allen and the Mentors, and he really would bring all these different types of acts, and it was just a little kind of crap hole type club, but everybody enjoyed it, and especially for 1989, 1990, and that's where I first met Jack. And then I think a year or two later, he became a promoter at the Milwaukee Eagles Rave Club, and then that's when he started giving us the bigger opportunities to open for a lot of the bigger bands.
You were also writing to a lot of guys back then too, right? You were writing to Frank from Suffocation. This was like back when the tape trading days, and you were writing to Kyle from Bolt Thrower, Mitch from Napalm. I mean, what was for people who weren't around that time period? Like, it was a pretty crazy time, right?
It's like instead of picking up the phone or something like that, you would just write a long letter, and you'd wait a week or two or whatever, depending on where they were. But yeah, I wrote to everybody. I mean, the guys at Carcass, the guys in Entombed, just everybody. And it was awesome. It was so great because it wasn't like, today where you could text somebody or something like that. You had to put more effort into it. You had to sit down and write a letter, and then stuff the letter, and then put the stamp on the letter, go to the post office. So it was more of an effort. And all those guys were awesome. I mean, they were just, I wish I never would have lost touch with them over the years, but some people go their own way. Because I know Frank and I from Suffocation, we had a common thing is we were both married, and we both had a kid at the same time, where at that time, a lot of musicians, very few around us had children, very few of us. And him and I were I feel like we were like the only two. And so we kind of had that commonality between us.
Yeah, and Frank, I know Ed's a big Suffocation guy himself, and I know Bolt Thrower too.
Carl.
So you guys, so 93, you guys do your first full length. You guys do Dying Remains, which is, considered a classic to many. Comes out in 93 on Def Records, but that was actually supposed to come out in 91 or 92, but it got delayed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we recorded that like at least a year and a half earlier, and we don't know why. We don't know if it was budget. I'm thinking it was probably budget or something. Obviously, we didn't know if Def was in a bad financial state. We don't know, or they weren't telling us. But yeah, we had recorded it like at least a good year or so earlier, and we're like waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting, and then finally we're like, okay, '93, it's going to come out. We're like, okay, but yeah, the album it's older than '93. It's at least a good year, older than when it came out.
And I saw you quoted as saying back on that record on Dying Remains, that was a record that you felt like that as a band, you guys really wore your influences on your sleeve.
Oh God, yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, we were listening to all the European bands, Bull Thrower, Entombed, Grave, Paradise Lost, especially, all that. I mean, and we listened to a lot of American bands too. We were listening to Autopsy and Malevolent Creation and Monstrosity and I'm trying to think, Cannibal Corpse. I mean, so we're listening, and Death, of course. So we're listening to everything, but I feel like, yeah, the European bands for some reason just influenced us a little bit more at that point. And I really think it shows in that record, especially with the riffs and the writing. And it's like you got kind of a little bit of a melting pot of a bunch of different European bands.
And you were always pretty honest with like, you weren't a Possessed fan really, which you were,
No.
you were honest.
Not that I dislike them. Okay.
Yeah, you
not
just
that I
weren't a
dislike
fan.
them. I just wasn't into them. That's all.
And you didn't like Scream Bloody Gore.
No,
some people
would.
Yeah,
no.
Yeah,
I know. I was waiting for the people to show up on my front lawn with pitchforks and torches. Like, how dare you? How dare you? Because I mean, let's face it, man. Especially the last week I've been online, and I'm like, man, people are just sensitive about everything. It's like
2024.
Oh my God, dude. I mean, the Death Camp puts out a pink shirt with a cat on it, and everybody's going ape shit over it, and like, and I'm like, so yeah, so no, yeah, I thought I was going to get a lot of flack from that. I don't know what it was about Scream Bloody Gore. I just really didn't resonate with me. The Leprosy, that's where I was like, oh geez, this is it. This is a classic. I still love that record. It's still one of my favorite records. So
and Cause of Death, I know you were big on that one too. Which
huge,
for me, that's a fucking great record.
Huge. James, even Spiritual Healing too, because all that stuff kind of really came out. I'm pretty sure before we even did our first record, especially Spiritual Healing, and we were signing a 3-album deal with Eric in Chicago with Grindcore Records, and he had given me the Human tape. He's like, here's for the ride home. Here's the Human pre-release for Human. And that like changed everything. But as far as like James Murphy on that Spiritual Healing, he changed everything. He changed everything, in my opinion, for the course of not only death metal, but how solos too. Just changed the map, and then Cause of Death comes out and you're like, wow, like you didn't think it could get any better. And then it's like, boom, these guys came out and it just, yeah, if you don't have Cause of Death in your collection, something's wrong,
Yeah, and you mentioned obviously the delay in the album because for the Dying Remains record, because the band actually broke up right in '92. You had got married, you had a kid, and
Yeah, and it's kind of weird too because my recollection's a little different than what probably really happened, and I know I still talk to Kent a lot. We get together and all this stuff, and I kind of asked him a couple months ago. I go, what happened there? And he's like, really? You want to know? I was like, yeah. And he's like, well, he goes, your wife at the time did not like you being in a band. And I said, that's so strange because I met her, I had already had 2 demos under my belt before we got married. And so he was like, yeah, he goes, if she didn't want you to come to rehearsal, you didn't come to rehearsal. And I was like, wow, that does not sound like me. And you can even ask my current guys how I am about that. Like missing a rehearsal it's not an option for me. So that was his recollection, but yeah, there was a lot of turmoil, and and honestly, back then there was really no, I don't want to say, there was no compassion. There was no like, oh, hey, our fellow bandmates going through this, you know what I mean? And like you were talking about the turbulent times, this was one of those times. And, it was like, I'm on one side, they're on the other side, and we're both kind of going at it. And I was just like, fuck you guys. I'm done. I'm out of here. I'll take my ball and bat and I'll go play with somebody else.
And you did that.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I did.
And you also, yes, you picked up 3 local guys and started doing shows under the Morta Skuld name. And Jason, Kent, and Jason again began to write material on their own on another side. Yes. They were trying to find a singer. So you guys went to, I guess it was a Halloween party, maybe that Realm held.
Yeah.
The band Realm.
I am impressed with your research because yes, that's exactly
he's a nut job, dude. We told you.
I love it.
We just don't waste people's time if we're going to bring you on here, man. Like
I said, we haven't asked what your favorite food is yet, so you know it's a good interview.
Good, but if he does his research, he probably already knows.
Right.
But yeah, no, that's exactly what happened. It was funny. The guys in Vile Aggression weren't doing anything, so I kind of snagged them to be my band, and then the other guys that were in Morta Skuld or whatever, trying to do their thing, they couldn't find anybody. And the weird part about it was on Dying Remains, we were, I think, drop C, I think it was, or something like that. And then in my departure, they tuned up to D standard. So Death, I think Obituaries, I think D standard maybe. So they tuned up and I was like, oh man. I was like, I really wanted to stay that European sound, But yeah, it was a Halloween party and Kent was playing with Realm. And I was like, what the hell's going on here? I'm like, you're playing with these guys now? He goes, yeah, we're just testing the waters. I'm like, okay. And then they had told me about what they were doing. And it was kind of like one of those things where you broke up with a girlfriend, then you run into her, and then you're like, hey, things weren't so bad, were they? And they were like, hey, man, we got a bunch of material. We can't find anybody. If you're not doing anything, why don't you stop by? And you can check out the material. And that's pretty much what I did.
You mentioned the tuning. It kind of fucked you up on the next record, right? Because you guys did the As Humanity Fades. And I know for you, that was like kind of a hard record for you to do because it was, they had changed, obviously. Like you said, you guys were at the drop C and they went to the D. So yeah, that it was what they had 4 songs or 5 songs written when you came back into that fold?
They had like 8, I think it was 8 songs. And me being, I honestly never wanted to get technical because I'm not a technical player. But they had gotten a little technical, and I'm like, ooh, like, I don't know if I like this, So I kind of picked the songs that I felt I wanted to play, and then learning some of those songs. Yeah, I had a lot of difficulty because it was kind of, when Jason O'Connell came into the band at first, he was adapting to my style, and then now I'm adapting to his style. And so he was a very clean picker, very clean up and down picker, very articulate, and not very sloppy at all. And so it was very hard for me to go in and like really get these intricacies down very well. And like you were saying at the time, we weren't like, oh, hey, don't worry about it. It was like, screw you, get back in there, do it right, and it was just more pressure. And so there were a lot of riffs I struggled with, but I eventually got them down, obviously, because the record's done and recorded. But yeah, it was a little bit of a constant struggle with that album.
But you did do your own lyrics. You got to write your own lyrics, and you got to do your own solos and shit. You wrote all that.
Yeah, and then we ended up writing. I think we picked like 5 songs, and then I think we wrote the 6. I think there's like 11 on that record, and then the rest of the songs we wrote as a band. And then, I was able to do my own solos and lyrics, yes.
And with your solos, what people might not realize is you write 85% of your solos, and then you improvise the 15 when you're recording them?
Yes. I for Dying Remains, that was all improvised. I wasn't well trained. I wasn't seasoned at that point. So all the solos on Dying Remains are all improvised. Like, trying to reduplicate them is kind of hard, but yeah, that was all improvised. And then when I went into the As Humanity Fades portion, I was working with a buddy of mine, Jeff. He was kind of a co-producer. Trying to think of his last name now. Anyways, so Jeff, very, very well-rounded musician, and he was like, "Well, let's look at what you're doing. Let's try to kind of map it out." And we would just sit there and we would like, okay, well, we like this part, so we'll start, and so the solos were definitely a lot more thought out and a little bit more planned out for As Humanity Fades.
And another thing with it's crazy, you guys were doing no touring at this time. At this time
None.
period, like
None.
at this time period,
None.
there was no touring, and you
Nope.
blame a lot of that on your drummer, right? Back at the time period, because they did not want to drum, they didn't want to tour.
Well, you know, it's kind of a weird thing. I learned that after many, many years that he wasn't a big travel guy at that time. But he was also going to college. So he was like working full time, going to school full time, and then practicing with us like 3 days a week. So there really wasn't a lot of, like, he didn't have a lot of time to go tour because he was either busy at work, with school, or playing with us. So, you know, and we didn't really have, we had a couple opportunities. I think one was to go out with Morbid Angel once, and one was Napalm Death. And I'd throw it across to him. I'd be like, hey, man, we got this opportunity, because Jack Koshik was very plugged in with these guys. He'd say, hey, I got this opportunity for you guys. I bring it to the band, and, you know, Kent was like, yeah, it's just not going to work, you know. So I want to say it was probably because of the schooling and everything at that time, but I don't think he really wanted to travel. And I think maybe that was something we probably just didn't talk about.
You guys hit 1995. You guys do the For All Eternity, which comes out on Peaceville. And would you consider that was more of a band effort, that next record?
Yeah, well, there was one, the actual title track, For All Eternity, that was a song that was left over from the As Humanity writing sessions that we didn't play. So we did take that one. And I'd have to ask Kent on this, but there might have been one more. So I know for sure there was one song that was taken from that process. There might have been two. But then, yeah, the rest was all pretty much a band effort, yes.
95, right? That was a weird time too, because I think that in death metal wise, death metal was bigger in Europe than it was in the States at that time. There was that fade.
Yeah, it was awful. It was awful. It was like kind of like, where did everybody go? You know, it was like we're playing shows, and instead of playing in front of like 300-400 people, it's like 50. And we're like, where did everybody go? And it was like the grunge scene came and just came in with a vengeance, and just decimated every other form of music, in my opinion, for a while. And, you know, guys were like, I don't want to play double bass anymore. I don't want to play fast. I want to play Nirvana or, you know, Alice in Chains type stuff.
Double bass drummers were rare at that time period.
Yeah.
No one wanted to play double bass.
Nope.
Yeah.
And we kind of felt lost. That record kind of really came out and didn't do much. It just came out and like, oh, here it is. And it was gone. And we're like, wow, what happened?
And that record, you guys were actually, I know it went on Peaceville, right? But you guys actually, at one time, you had to deal with another label for that one?
No, we were still contracted under Peaceville for that third record. So our deal was for 3 records. And then after that For All Eternity record was done, the agreement was, you know, reached its end. And for some reason, they didn't have an interest on re-signing us at that point.
And you guys were doing shows with it around that time period. What? You guys were doing shows with Cannibal, Morbid Angel, Testament.
Obituary,
you guys were playing.
You name it. Yeah. Carcass, Entombed, Autopsy, Cancer. Devastation. The list. Yeah. We were very, very blessed to be able to do those shows.
And who were you? Did you guys have those buddy bands back then that you guys eventually would like, you know, you had that friendship you would form?
Yeah. Us and became really good friends with Malevolent, me and Phil and Rob and you know, the guys at that time. We were all friends with all those guys, especially at the metal fests too. You know, I'd go to the hotel where everybody was staying, and I would literally just hop from room to room to room to room. And I remember the one year it was like, I think it must have been I felt like it was a Florida Death Fest or something, because it was like Malevolent, Cannibal, Atheist, you know, and it was like all these Florida bands. So it was really awesome. I was hanging out with Kelly from Atheist, excuse me, at the time, and just going to different rooms and having a beer, taking a toke, you know, whatever, and just met a lot of really cool guys.
You guys go to 97. You guys put out the Surface album. You guys leave Peaceville, and then was it Pavement Music you guys hooked up with?
Yeah, we were looking for a record deal, and we were like, all right, we're gonna go and do a 4-song demo, shop it. We did that, went and shopped it. No interest whatsoever. And then we were at my buddy Tom's house in Illinois, and he was drumming for Oppressor at the time. And there was a show in town. It was Oppressor and Malevolent Creation. And the guys in Malevolent were staying at his house. So we did this after party thing. It was just tons of fun. I remember Rob Barrett and Jason Hellman got so drunk they ended up sleeping in the back of a pickup truck or something like that. It was, I'm like, we're like, where are you guys? They're like, oh, they're passed out in the back of the pickup truck, because Jason Blackowitz, right? Is that how you pronounce it? Yeah, he was like, here, whiskey, and so everybody's like, yeah, whiskey. But long story short, Phil was like, I want to check out what you guys are doing. And we put the Force song on, and the first track was Killing Machines. And he was like, oh, dude, I fucking love that song. I'm going to talk to Mark from Pavement tomorrow. And sure as shit, that's what he did. He talked to Pavement. And even before that, we shot 4 songs, didn't get anything. We went back in and did another 4 songs. And what's really ironic is Surface was done in 2 different parts, but it doesn't sound different, which was awesome. And we were actually in the process of releasing this album ourselves. Matter of fact, we got it pressed up. We were in a mastering studio in Chicago that duplicated the discs and all that, and we put it out ourselves. And then, like, right after we put it out, Mark from Pavement calls us and is like, hey, I want to pick this up. I want to license this from you. We were like, okay. So then he licensed it, and it didn't do anything. It really didn't do anything. I think there was like 1 ad in Metal Edge at the time that magazine was out. There was 1 ad, and that was all I saw for the record. And then all of a sudden it was just like, it just kind of like came and went.
Yeah, because it kind of felt like the record didn't get as much attention as it should. But you guys used on the album artwork, you guys used SV Bell?
Yeah.
Who did
he had done For All Eternity.
Me.
Yeah, SV. Yeah, he did the For All Eternity cover. And then for Surface, we were like, what are we going to use? Like, we were just scrambling. Like, we had no clue. And we're like, hey, you got any stuff done? And that's another really weird, kind of a weird backstory is the Oppressor cover that SV Bell did, that was supposed to be ours. And they were supposed to take the For All Eternity cover. But they beat us to the punch, and, that's why we ended up with the For All Eternity cover. But getting to Surface, we're like, hey, you got anything? And he just threw this at us, and we were like, okay. Didn't even bother, didn't even look at it. And I've heard a lot of fans say that they don't think it got its due because the cover. So I don't know whether that's true or not. I do feel it was one of our out of the first 4 records we did. I feel like it was our best. We were at our top performance. Everybody was, we knew each other real well. We knew it. I could almost finish. If Jason O'Connell wrote a riff, I could almost finish it. We were just really in sync with each other at the time, and everybody was firing on all cylinders. And I feel it's a very underrated album, and I don't know why it gets looked over, but it does.
Well, you mentioned the album covers, and me and Ed always talk about it. I mean, every episode it comes up usually with any guest we have. Back then, that's you found bands from the shirts that the bands you listened to were wearing. You'd pull an album cover, and you'd be like, you didn't know if it was a great album, but you would judge by the album cover and say, "Fuck, man, this looks like it's going to be killer." Like last episode, we were mentioning Meatloaf, "Bat Out of Hell," how it fooled a lot of people. You're like, "This is a fucking sick cover," and then you get the record. It's totally different. Totally different than what you think it's going to be.
Absolutely.
So that's definitely like something that plays into that, right? And we always say that on the show.
Well, and also the name has to kind of have a little bit of like Meatloaf was kind of like, but you overlooked the name on that one because the cover was so fucking brutal. But like when I found, like Celtic Frost or Creator or even the first Sodom, the In the Sign of Evil, just that picture on the cover with the word Sodom, and I knew Sodom from my days as in Catholic, whatever, knew that was a bad word. Like that meant something evil. So I was like, that's got to work. So, it was definitely one of those things and honestly, your logo should have sold, for people who were interested in something heavy, that should have been itself. Because your logo, even like the bright green one and a lot of those, it sticks out. It's not your typical, like some
you can read it. which is a
Yes.
big bonus.
I'm probably going to get crucified for this. I hate it when I can't read a band logo. And I've said this many times, and I'm just being honest. If I can't read your band logo, I'm probably not going to listen. I'm probably not going to listen to it.
Well, the meme, what's the meme where they show somebody throwing a pile of sticks, and then what's that say?
Yeah,
so.
And so I always wanted that. And like I said, when I brought the original logo to Chad Hensel, and he redid it, I was like, oh man, like he just did such a fantastic job. And it's and I love like the Malevolent logo. I love a lot of different band logos, but as long as I can read it, that's what I want, because I'm thinking to myself, why would I put, why have something I don't know. But I mean, to each their own, if that's what
you'd be fucking surprised, dude. We get people to send stuff to this show to announce, like they'll be like, hey, can you announce this show? And they'll send me the flyer. And man, I'm like, I feel bad. I'm like, out of the 7 bands, I can read 3 of the fucking logos. I'm like, I don't know what to do, because I can't even like at least put it in parentheses underneath what the real name is or something.
That's
so
I can people. You notice how they started doing that. Bands had to put the little type of what your band name is, and if you have to tell people what your band name is, it kind of defeats the purpose of the whole thing. I think. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm old.
Well, I am too. So it, like I said, and I mean, even back in the day too, because I'm still friends with pretty much everybody that I've been in the band with. Jason O'Connell, he kind of went off the grid a little bit, so nobody really speaks to him too much. But everybody else I am, and even like I was talking with my first drummer, Jesse Roferts, and he was all like, man, if we got something in the mail and it was a bad production, he told me I would just get irate about it, because that's why when we went into Gory Departure, I wanted a clean production. I like the first Carcass. I can't listen to. It's just
you don't like muddy. I've heard this before. You do not like Muddy Productions, right?
No. And like I said, and with having the Leprosy as a reference for me, I was like, well, we can't just go in there and just muddy, and we have to have some kind of definition.
It makes total sense. Well, we're actually going to play a track off of the Surface record now. We're going to play Time We'll Never Forget. Is there any story behind this track?
That one, it was, I was just going through a lot of stuff, and I just wanted to make sure that what I was writing was something that I was going to remember years later, is like Time Will Never Forget. You'll never forget about where you came from.
There you go. So we're going to play that right now. This is off the 1997 Surface record. This is Time We'll Never Forget, and we'll be back on the Tampa Morgue right after this song. We're back on the Tampa Morgue, and that was Time We'll Never Forget off the 1997 Morta Skuld record, Surface. So we go to 98, right? And that was a time for you guys where you guys actually basically shit hit the fan for you guys. First of all, you guys played for Slayer. You guys played at the Rave Ballroom with Slayer, which was completely packed, if I'm correct.
Oh yeah. Well, that was our first opportunity to actually do a tour. And we got approached. Jack approached us again. Like I said, he loosely managed us, but really gave us a lot of our first opportunities. And so he's like, "Hey, man, I got this 2-week tour put together," and we're like, "Okay, I'm excited. Because I'm like, yes, we got to do this." And Kent wasn't, I don't think, as excited, and I mean, couldn't tell, but he had just gotten married. I know he was having his first kid like any day, like she was due any day. And so I don't know if it was a psychosomatic thing or what it was, but we opened for Slayer here in town. We were very well received, because you hear the stories about bands being booed and all that stuff. We were very, very well received. We had a day off. Then the next day it was Florida, Fort Walton Beach. And it's
Master,
funny because
right?
Huh?
With Master.
But a lot of people don't even like Fort Walton. What? And I was like, I don't know. It's in Florida. And like, even people in Florida, like, I've never heard of that. And I'm like, yeah, it's like kind of in this little dip in the state, like right when you first come into the state. So it's right off the beach. Yeah, it was for Master. And we get in there, we set up all our stuff, and we're like, all right, we're ready to play. And for some reason, as we were getting closer to the venue, Kent was just not feeling good. And it just was getting worse. To the point where, like, I think he passed out for a little bit too. Like, we were like, what the hell's going on here? So as the show time started getting closer, he was just out, like not even moving. And, we're trying to keep him hydrated and all this stuff. And we're thinking maybe it's we come from the Midwest and, maybe it's elevation, who knows? And finally it got to the point where it's like, we got to take this guy to the doctor. So we took him to a local hospital. They pumped him with saline. They said he's severely dehydrated, but he should be okay. So we're like, all right, fine. So we go back to the club. There are about 20 people hanging out. And he's like, I'm not going to play, And I was like, oh man, we're like, come on, just 1-2 songs. And people were begging, just 2 songs, 1 song. Their stuff was already set up.
You guys had to be tripping out a little bit, man. Like,
yeah, it was it was an awful time because I know his family got a hold of the bar number, and they were like calling the bar, and then like they were like, hey, is there a Dave Gregor here? I'm like, yeah, like here, and it's his dad's on the phone, and it was just like, yeah, and I used to be really good friends with his family and his dad, and after that I was like, wow, man, like his dad really ripped me a new asshole, and I was like, nobody's doing anything, like they felt we were forcing him to play, and we're like, nobody's forcing anybody. We're just concerned about his health. We're here. We're how many thousands of miles away from home. There's fans here. We just want to play. So at that point, yeah, it was really bad for me because I'm like really trying to help the guy, and then his parents are like calling me at the bar, and finally we got to the hotel room and we had a discussion, and we're like, all right, well, tomorrow is South Carolina. I think it was 6 feet under. Let's do this. And he was like, no, he goes, I just want to go home. So, Jack had put a lot of his own money into this for us. And he was upset. And he's like, I really need you to get home so we can, turn in the rental. And then the label caught wind of it. And then we got like a Dear John letter the next week in the mail, like, forget you guys. We lost everybody. It's like Jack didn't want nothing to do with us. I mean, we lost everything. So it wasn't fun for me.
And you guys returned back to Milwaukee and actually started writing more songs with him, right? On drums for a little bit of time period.
And we played a couple of shows. We played Scott knows. I think one was Immolation at Jackhammers because at that point, so when we were in the studio with Surface, I came in the studio and Jason O'Connell's stuff was gone. And I was like, what's going on? So apparently he had told the other 3 guys he was quitting, but he couldn't tell me or didn't want to tell me, whatever the case was. So he was gone. So we had to find somebody. And that's when Scott joined the band. And then Scott played Slayer and then went on the road with us. And it was just the weirdest thing. So we get home and then we did, like I said, Immolation at Jackhammer's. I think we did maybe, I don't know if it was Broken Hope or there was like one or two other shows. We did like 2 or 3 shows and we started writing stuff, which I wish we had today or would have kept it. But we wrote like 3 or 4 songs and they were sounding really good and we were pumped and excited. And then, Kent was just like, I want to be a family man. I don't want to do the band thing. And we're like, oh, okay, well, it is what it is.
Band breaks up, but so you had a whole, which we'll talk about. So, but band breaks up, what, 98? Then you form a band called 9mm Solution in 2022. And you guys did what, 6 or 7 years of demos, and you guys actually had radio airplay. You guys did the video for Below. You guys were doing successful tours, and you guys were doing festivals, right? It was pretty for that time period.
Yes and no. With that band, I think was it 2004 or 5? I think we started. The weird thing was, I'm even going to go back further. So when Ken had left the band, Jason Hellman and I were like, we got to find somebody. So we were just looking, and we were trying guys out left and right. And nobody, like I said, nobody either wanted to play fast or play double bass, or they couldn't. So we're trying guys out. Nobody was working out. Jason Hellman had started writing material, not together, but like he would, hey, I got this song. And we got a 4-track, and he had a drum machine, and he programmed, very, very smart guy, programmed all the drums, tracked the guitars, and then he'd come over to my house and he'd show me the song. And then he wrote like 4 songs like this, and I'd play along with the material. And we tried out drummers to that, and we couldn't, nobody could do it. So at that point, I was like, you know what, man, you're a bass player. You have a lot more bands that are after you than they are me. Go do your thing. So he went and did his thing. And then I went and tried out for a bunch of non-death metal local bands, and nobody wanted me. Everybody was like, yeah, nah, I'm like, all right, So then I kind of was like, wow, what do I do? So I was like, I'm just going to start an original band from scratch. And that's kind of what I did. And I found, I'm trying to think. So it was Ed Wallner, and then the Hobbs, the singer, and then Jason Hellman was in the band at first, and then Chad, my buddy Chad, jumped in. So he jumped in and replaced Jason. So we did a couple demos. We were just demoing, and then we finally got. There's a small label in Illinois, Mortal Music, that decided to release the first album we did, and One Shot, One Kill. And then at that point, we really wanted to be more mainstream. We wanted to be on the radio. We wanted to get on a big tour. We wanted to really, that next level shit. And
because I said 2022 too, but I was incorrect because my mistake. I said that because it was 2005 because that was when that music was kind of the shift happened, right? Mm-hmm. Because you tried to actually get the band on Peaceville, right? But they just didn't want anything to do with it.
Right. And the new metal, as you call it. To me, I don't know what what categorizes new metal, to be honest with you. But we had clean vocals and dirty vocals, and everybody's just assimilated that with new metal. So we're like, okay. And I had been talking to Peaceville the whole time, and they were like, no, man. And I was angry. Oh, man, I was so angry at them. Some of the emails back and forth, I was just like, come on. Now I look back and go, dude, that's not what they would sign, So we tried getting signed. We, like I said, Mortal Music, put that out. And then I started working with Tim King, which used to be an Oppressor. And then he was in the big rock band Soil.
I remember.
Yeah. So
they were on some movie soundtrack, weren't they, back then? I forget what movie it was, but I believe they.
Yeah. So they were really huge. They were touring everywhere, signed, whatever, $2 million deal, whatever. I was like, that's what I want to do. So I teamed up with Tim, and he pretty much came and produced, like we picked out, like we'd sent him a bunch of songs. He picked out 5 songs, came down, And literally for 8 hours, I'd never done this before. 8 hours, we arranged and rearranged and rearranged and rearranged each song on the spot. On the spot. So it'd be like, hey, no, take this riff, put it here, put that here, do this 4, not 3, this, that. I was like, wow, I've never done that before. So we got these songs really just finely tuned, and they were just, they sounded great. And so then when we went into the studio to do the Dream is Dead record, we hired him as a producer to come in the studio as well to, you know, help shape some of the stuff, but also to handle the recording process as well.
Was there any backlash from like the Morta Skuld fans?
Oh, tons. I got like really bad, like, what the hell are you doing? And you sold out and all this other stuff. And I was like, hey man, I tried to keep the dream alive. I said, but nobody wanted to come along for the ride. So I said, what am I supposed to do? You know? So yeah, I got a lot of backlash for that, lots. And like I said, 9 Mil, we did the Below video. Then we eventually signed to Rock Ridge Records, which is one of the guitarists, and 3 Doors Down, I think it is his label. Signed us to that. And then we just did like a small Midwestern tour, nothing big. We didn't do any festivals really. It was just small Midwestern stuff. And then at that point, just differences of opinions were coming into play. And, you know, I was fighting for custody of my son at the point, and just differences like, you know, I want to do this and you don't want to do this, but I want to do this, you want to do this. And then the band just kind of dissipated.
You know, and we would see what Morta Skuld would come. Now, was that so? You guys did the compilation Through the Eyes of Death. Was that has had a lot to do with Eric, right? With the old demos and stuff.
Yeah, Eric had contacted me and was like, "Hey, I'd really like those first 2 demos on CD." And I was like, "Well, I don't know how to put them on CD. You know what I mean? I ain't got no gear, you know." So he's like, "Well, I'll pay for the studio. You go in the studio, you transfer it, and then send me a copy." Cool. So I went in the studio. And what's really ironic is when we first recorded Prolong the Agony with Eric, somehow, I don't know how this happened, but like I think it was a second or second and a half of the beginning of each song got cut. So that's why the one song on there has a fade in, because we're like, we can't, you know, we really, you know. So we realized this afterwards. After we did the demo, we knew what was what. But when we were in the studio doing the Through the Eyes of Death for Eric, Jeff Yeager was doing it with me, and he's like, I think I can fix this. He's like, I think I can fix this so the beginnings are actually what we wanted them to be. So I was like, okay. So Eric sent us in the studio again, and we made the fixes. And then it just seemed like every couple of weeks we were just finding more material to add to this, or we're like, you know what, we hear this. Like on Gory Departure, Jason Hellman's bass had this really weird buzz, and we think it was because he had his battery for his pickups was dying. And so when we first released that, I was like, oh, you just hear this. It was awful. So somehow Jeff was able to fix that, and so we fixed it, and by like 2 or 3 times in the studio, you know, Eric paying for, go in and do this. We came out with this awesome CD, and we were like, wow, this sounds really, really good. I mean, it sounded good back then as well, but it sounded really good. And then I kind of was like, he was doing all the death reissues for Relapse. And I was just like, And then he's like, hey, would you mind if we threw this out as a compilation? And I was like, yeah, okay, you know. And at the time, I wasn't playing with anybody. I was still in between bands, so I wasn't doing anything. And then, he put the compilation out, and, you know, we hired a Clawhammer PR to do the PR for it, and just got some interest in the band again.
And then he recommended you go out and get some new members, basically, and start the whole thing over again. Because you guys were back and running, 2012, because you guys did the Serving the Two Masters EP. Yeah. Jason Hellman was back with you on that.
Yep.
And you guys recorded most of that material yourself, actually.
Yeah. So what happened was we Eric was just constantly pushing me like, hey, you should get the band back together. And I'm like, I was like, I don't know. Can I play death metal anymore? I don't know. I've been gone for 8 years or whatever it's been. I don't know if I can play death metal anymore. How do I do it? Kind of like the, Will Ferrell thing when Talladega Nights, where he's like, I don't know what to do with my hands, like I don't know what to do, So that's kind of what I was like. What do I do? What do I do? I don't know. But he kept pushing at it, and I was like, all right. So I called Jeff Yeager, Kevin Zeitler, because Jason Hellman was on board right away. I didn't even have to ask him. I knew he was on board. So I talked to Kevin and Jeff. So that's a combination of the first 2 demo lineups. And they were like, yeah, let's do this, So we got together, relearned the songs. Of course, now at this point, I'm in a different tuning. I had been at drop A sharp with the 9mm stuff. And I really didn't want to change tuning. So I'm like, no, let's transpose this drop stuff into this drop stuff. And it sounded really heavy. So band got together, played 5 or 6 shows. Jason and I wanted to start writing again. And Jeff was like, And Jeff had some health problems. I know he had a cancer for a little bit. And then he had a subarachnic hemorrhage, or whatever the hell you call that. Which is like a widowmaker. Like, people usually don't come back from that. So I know. And it was weird. It was like right in the time we had shows going on, this happens to him. And I'm like, dude, if you can't play, don't worry about it. No, yeah. I should be all right. So we finished up the shows with Jeff, and we wanted to play our other material, stuff off of Surface and stuff like that. And Jeff just didn't have the stamina. He's just, I think because of all the health issues. So he got frustrated, in my opinion, but he was like, no, he goes, I really didn't want to write anything new. I just wanted to play a couple shows. And I was like, oh, well, I wish I would have known that, because, here we have, it's time invested now. So he decides to leave, and then Jason and Kevin left too. And then here it is. It's like me and Jason again. It's kind of like we go all the way back to 1989, and it's like just me and him again. And then we had been talking with Eric House for quite a while. And it was just what the timing wasn't right for Eric. And then all of a sudden, just out of the blue, Eric called us and was like, hey, I'm on board. Let's do this,
And Eric had been following you guys since like back in the day, right? Because he was actually very familiar with Kent's playing back then.
Yeah, he had been following us since he was like 16. And Kent was like I don't know, I don't even know what the term is, but he really like influenced, Eric a lot. And Eric just really loved his playing too. So we had that, and Eric was kind of like, well, whatever song you want to play, I'll play anything. I know it all. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. So we started playing the demos. We were at first just the demos with Eric, and then it was like, hey man, let's play some Dying Remains stuff. And he's like, yeah, let's do it. So we started kind of learning some more Dying Remains material, and then at that point we were like, Jason and I were like, well, why don't we try writing something? Let's see if there's any interest in the band, Because the band, we started doing this about 2011 is when we kind of, started the formation. And then 2012 is when the comp came out, and we, officially were kind of back. And
now, when you guys decided to come back, though, was that at that time period, 2012? That's when the death metal, like, it was kind of like the old school death metal was kind of like, as it was like a resurgence, right? And the bands were starting to pop up again, and people were.
Right. Everybody had kind of like, hey, we're going to do a reunion, and this guy's doing a reunion and stuff. And we were like, let's see if there's any interest. And yeah, we did the Serving Two Masters EP. We recorded pretty much everything ourselves. I think I went in the studio to do vocals, and we mixed in the studio. But yeah, we did almost all of it ourselves, and we just threw it out there, and just let's test the waters and see if there's any interest. And luckily enough for us, there was definitely some interest in it.
And me and Ed were talking about Eric earlier before you came on the show. Actually, Eric did 2 albums with Jungle Rod. He did the Fueled by Hate record in 2004, the 2009 record, What Horror Awaits. But he also played with a guy that Ed, you played with. I still does, actually. I think he plays with Human Artifacts with Matt Bishop.
Yes, yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. Uh-huh. So you hit it off with Eric right away, right? It was immediate.
Oh yeah, it was like we're at TGI Fridays, and he's sitting at the end of the bar, already got a pitcher of beer, and we're like, all right, I think we're gonna be good,
Yeah.
So yeah, there were a couple of many rounds, over talks and stuff, and Eric just he was just like right away, he was just all in, so it was pretty cool.
And then next? So Jason Hellman left the band. Like you said, you guys were bandmates forever, and you got AJ involved. How did you meet AJ, and why did Jason leave?
Well, Jason Jason was, he was having some, how can I say, kind of like what I went through back in the
Life
90s
problems,
with the
then.
marriage thing and stuff like that. And so he was having a little bit of problems in that area. And it was just getting to the point where, man, like it was just turbulent. It was just turbulent. Like he would come to practice and it was like kind of my way or no way. And we were just kind of like, man, like, and the other thing too is he wanted to play out in like and do all this stuff. Like he wanted to play with the Milwaukee Symphony or orchestra, and he wanted to play in this wedding band, and he wanted to play in this cover band, and he actually joined Dr. Shrinker and didn't even tell us about it. So we were like, man, we're like, why do you want to be in all these bands? Like, it was always one for all for one, like for many years, between us. And so we couldn't really play out because he was just too busy. And there was like a period of time where like he didn't even come to practice for like a month and a half because like I'm just too busy. And we were just like, man. And then I remember he got into it with another band member, and I was like, forget this. I was like, both of you guys shut the fuck up. And I said, next person that talks leaves. And Jason was the next guy that talked. So I was like, you got to leave. And he left. He played one show after that with us because we had a show like a month later, and he played that with us. It went real well, but it was just a lot of back and forth, man. It was just kind of like he wanted to write all the material. There was like no input from me, and the material he was writing, I really didn't care for, and so it was just a really hard time between us. So then one of my buddies was like talking about AJ, and I was like, AJ, like. I didn't even know AJ at all at the time. It's like, I don't know who this kid is,
That's AJ Lewandowski, right?
Lewandowski, yeah.
Lewandowski, okay.
Mm-hmm. So it was funny. We got in contact with AJ, and that guy just came at me. Wow, what an enigma that guy is. Just such an amazing player. Like, just stupidly good. Like, just beyond good. Like, it's just ridiculous how good this guy is. So, yeah, he came in the band. Started playing with us. Everything went well, and then at that point, we were like, hey, let's write. I think we had a few songs already written for Wounds Deeper Than Time, and he came in and kind of put his bass over that, and I'll never forget it because we went in the studio, and like when we were at practice, I really couldn't hear him very well. Sometimes, I mean, I could hear him, but I just wasn't paying attention because I'm paying attention to what I'm doing. We went in the studio, and I'm like, what the hell are you doing? I mean, he's all like, I'm like, what the hell are you doing? Like, that's not in the song. And he goes, yeah, it is. I'm like, I never heard that before. So it was funny because I'm like, what are you playing? Like all these like really intricate bass, like, what the hell are you doing? Like I've never heard that at practice, but I'm hearing it now. So he was just stupidly good. And once we heard his bass tracks, we were like, wow, like, this is good. Like, this guy is really good. And he was in the band for like maybe a year or two, and it just got to a point where like sometimes he wouldn't even come to practice for like 2 months at a crack, for whatever reason. And he toured with I don't want to say Defeated Sanity. I can't think of their name now, but he toured in a tech death band for a while. And
Decrepit Birth.
That's it. Thank you. And he toured with them, and he just decided he didn't like the tour, So even when we were doing California Death Fest, Maryland Death Fest, he just, how can I say this? He just was to himself, Because
I was going to say, you guys were doing more out of town shows at that time, right?
Yeah,
you started traveling more.
Yeah, we were traveling more, we were flying more, and he just got to a point where you could just tell he just wasn't. He didn't like the traveling part of it. And it just got to a point where it's like, well, we want to do more. So how about if we find somebody to take your place for the traveling gigs? And he was like, all right, that's cool. And John Hill came in to play, and John actually spent more time with us than he did. And so it just got to this weird point where it was like New Year's Eve, and I got an email from AJ saying he quit. It was a very well put together email, but it was just, I'm out of the band. And I think he was having some kind of, even though he's very young, I don't even think he was 30 at the time. He was going through some midlife crisis thing where he just he wanted to change his job, and he wanted to go back to school, and it just seemed like he didn't have time for us. So he kind of that was his departure, and then insert John Hill.
And John was with you now still, and you guys did. So you talked about that, the Wounds Deeper Than Time, which was the 2017 record. And you guys actually had a few of those songs written already from the Serving the Masters lineup.
Yes, yeah. After the Serving Two Masters EP, we wanted to start writing, for a record, for a full length. And I had been talking to Peaceville Records at this time because we had just put out Dying Remains reissue, and then the label's like, "Well, we want to reissue the first 3," and I was like, "Oh, I just wanted to do the first one because." Over the course of the years, I had several fans constantly, well, I can't find the original pressings, like $200, this and that. So I kind of begged Peaceville. I said, please, let's reissue Dying Remains so the fans can get it at an affordable cost. Can you at least do that for me? And so we went through the talks to do that. And as we were doing that, I was like, hey, we just did this new EP. Check it out. This is the press behind it. This is what people are saying about it. Would you be willing to, sign us again for a deal? And after a couple months of talking, it came to fruition, and we were able to sign on for the Wounds record.
That also led to your first tour, right? In 30 years, you guys toured with Bomber and Scorched.
Yes. Yeah.
What was that like? To finally get out there and do your first tour. I mean, that had to be after 30 years.
It was exciting. But at the same time, it was kind of nerve-wracking because I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to hold up. I'm older now. I don't know. Is my voice going to hold up? Am I going to get sick? All that stuff goes through my mind. But it was fun. It was real fun. It was rough because I had never toured before. So it was pretty rough on me. I think at the end of it, I think we all got sick, I think, if I remember correctly. But no, it was fun going out there and just seeing the fans. And that was when I ran into Frank Reaney, which him and I had never met before. And we met
Frank from Eternal Bleeding.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And so me and him met, and we are awesome friends. Like, we remained best buddies from then till today. So it was awesome because I got to meet him on the road. I got a lot of my the tour experiences that you're supposed to have in your 20s and 30s. But no, it was fun playing with Bomber and Scorched, and it was definitely a great first experience.
And we're going to talk about the new record in a couple minutes here. But Frank actually wrote the lyrics to the first track on that record, right? On the new record, on the new record you have coming out, I should say.
Yes,
on
I'm
February
sorry.
23rd,
Yes,
which I'll get to.
Yeah, I was confused because he did write some lyrics on "Suffer for Nothing" too.
Yeah, and "Suffer for Nothing." That, as you said, AJ left for that one. That's 2020. "Suffer for Nothing."
Yes.
You guys bring in John Hill, like you said, who had played with the band before. Yep. And John filled in for 2.5 years, I think, before joining the band. And you guys started writing immediately after the Wounds record, right?
Yeah. Yep. Right after that record, we were like, we had some ideas. And like I said, we were, the weird part about the Suffer for Nothing record is AJ had just started to write. Like, he wrote all his bass parts on Wounds, but he didn't help with any arrangements or guitar parts. And then on Suffer for Nothing, and this is a story. It's kind of a funny story. So it was a practice day, and Scott couldn't make it for some reason. And I'm walking up to the house, and I hear a guitar, and I'm like, "What in the? Who the hell's playing my rig?" So I walk in, and AJ's got a baritone, six string baritone strapped on. He's playing through Scott's rig, and I'm like, "Dude, what are you doing?" And he goes, "I'm bored. I'm going to play guitar today." I says, "You're bored and you're going to play guitar today?" He goes, "Yeah." I go, "Dude, you are out of your freaking mind, bro. You no way. No. Just trust me." All right. So we go through the set. He plays the entire set. He knows all the riffs. I'm like, because his bass playing obviously was not he didn't play with the guitars often. Matter of fact, if he ever, I don't feel admit to this, but we played live a lot, and he would be like, "Oh, I just improvised everything." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He would literally tell us, he's like, "Yeah, I just played different bass lines for today for the show." And I'm like, and we didn't notice a difference. So he came in, he's playing guitar. I'm like, dude, yeah, okay, you think you're hot stuff. You didn't play any of the solos, bro. So whatever. So next week comes, he learns all the solos. So I'm like, you son of a bitch. I was like, damn, dude. So yeah, he was just that gifted. But then he started writing riffs on guitar, and he would like send us the files. And some of his stuff was kind of technical for me. And so I'd have to like, dude, can you slow that down, or can you send me the tab? I said, because I don't know what you're playing there. So that was a lot. He was still in, even though John was playing with us somewhat, he was still in the band, and he was kind of writing with us before he left. And then he had contributed to like, I don't know, like maybe 3 or 4 songs and like some pretty major contributions. And then he just left. And we were like, what the hell? Like, where is this coming from? So he left. And then that kind of left John to kind of pick up the pieces and kind of like go, because I don't really think there were any bass lines necessarily written or figured out for the newer songs, or at least not that I can recollect. But there were the guitar parts that AJ started contributing to. So it was kind of a really weird thing. It was like he was contributing and then just left. So
when you guys did Suffer for Nothing, right? It was, you guys tried to get more of the, how would I put it, the sound of what the band sounded like live. It was actually a pretty aggressive record compared to Wounds.
Yeah, Wounds was kind of I don't know, man. Different studio, different guy. But like with Wounds, like all the like the harmonies and like overdubs and stuff, that was all done. Like, you do it as an overdub. And then on Suffer for Nothing, Scott started doing those parts as an actual rhythm track. You know what I mean? So if he's playing a rhythm and he goes into a harmony, that's what he recorded on his rhythm track instead of overdubbing it and like flying it in, so to speak. Because if you listen to some, because you can kind of tell on some records, when you listen to people's records, you're like, oh, you can tell that was like overdubbed or flown in versus just playing, consistent playing with the band. So Scott had just started using those, what do you call them? The harmonies, and he would use them as his rhythm. Like he would play them along with his rhythm tracks. So I feel like it kind of made the album sound a little more aggressive, but we're also trying to find a guitar tone. And we were just like, well, you always want the best guitar tone you can find and everything else. And we were just trying different stuff and reamping everything else, and nothing worked. And we just literally just plugged direct into the Line 6 heads that we've been using for I've been using them for 20 years. Just plugged in direct, and we were like, this sounds great. This is what we're going to go with.
With Suffer for Nothing, I'm sure you guys were affected by the whole, obviously we all, it's funny because every episode we have, every band has been affected by the COVID time period, right? So that was 2020. You guys had some European shit planned and stuff. And what actually fell apart for you guys during that time period?
Well, we had a big European thing going on, and the Suffer for Nothing was already planned. So we knew we were going to be recording. We didn't know, obviously, the pandemic was going to come in and screw everything up so bad. And so we had a European tour, and I don't, to each their own on this, but I didn't want to get vaccinated. It was just something I didn't believe in for myself.
There you go, Ed. Hop on there, Ed. I know Ed's going to agree with you 100% on this one, eh?
For me, my reason. The only one I could take was the Johnson & Johnson, and that was stroking people out and blood clotting people out. So that was off the table. And once that was done, I was like, sorry, man, I'll stay home. Yeah.
Well, and that's kind of what happened to me too. I mean, there's definitely a lot of backlash I got for it, and oh, you're a bad person. I was like, to each their own. If you want to get it, get it. If you don't, you should have that choice. That's all I'm saying. And I didn't want to get it. And at the time, there were a lot of countries that were closed, or you had to have it to get in. And I wasn't about to force my band members either to get it or not get it. I wasn't going to force anybody. And I just got to a point where I'm like, you know what? I'm not dealing with this shit. I was like, we're just not going to go, or we're going to scale it back. And we were able to there were two main festivals that I really, really wanted. Well, there were three, but the one I think canceled due to COVID too. Can't remember what it was, but I think one canceled. So we had these two festivals, and I was like, I really want to play these festivals. And the one was the UK, and the other was Killtown. And at that point, neither one of those countries had anything. Everything was at that point started getting better, and also even just traveling during that time too. We didn't know what to expect, and I just was like, I really didn't want to go out there with my guys, and then some of us get sick and some of us not get sick and all that other garbage. So we just decided to scale it back to the two festivals, and went over and did the two festivals and had a blast, man. Just had a blast. Ran into a lot of really, really, really cool band guys that I haven't seen or talked to in quite a few years.
Did it affect your studio time at all when you were in there? Because I know here in Eastern Europe, man, it was fucking crazy. I was over here at this time.
Yeah.
And you couldn't, I can't even explain to you. Me and Ed, we talk all the time, and I always tell them, like, they were sending drones around to see if people had more than like 5 people at their fucking house. Like, It was really intense.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It was, so speaking of that, I lost my job. So I was working, lost my job because the place closed down. Everybody go home. You're going to die. Lost my job. I'm like, well, what do I do? What are we supposed to do? Then, but right before I lost my job, it was one of those things like you were saying. It was like, oh, you got to have what is it? Like you have to have a piece of paper saying you can go to work. And so the company I was working for at the time gave us all the letters so we could, go and come to work. And I was like, wow, this is nuts, So when it came to the studio, we were like, oh no, what are we going to do? We have the studio time booked. We've had it booked for months. We can't just cancel, So we just played it really kind of quiet. We really didn't. I don't know if this sounds bad or not, but we're just quiet about it. We didn't post that we were in the studio. We didn't want to alert anybody to like you said, a drone coming over or something. We just didn't want. We wanted to be low key, and we wanted to get the record done. We had worked really, really hard on this record for a couple of years. We had the studio time. The label was committed to putting it out. So we had all these things in play, and we were just like, we got to do this. We got to do this. But it did affect us all in some way, shape or form, because you couldn't go on social media, be like, hey, we're in the studio, or, you couldn't really promote it very well at that point because people were still kind of locked in their houses or out of work. And it was just a very dark time for everybody. And, so we really had to kind of keep it very quiet that we were recording a new record.
When you think about it, like people who don't, you forget some of these things, and no matter what people believe or what your stance is on anybody's stance on anything.
Right.
I remember like you would turn on the TV and see a sporting event, and there would be cardboard fucking people at the
wrestling.
At the
Remember WWE, they had the people on the screens.
I forget this shit until we talk about this.
And UFC was doing it at the Apex Center, so you were fighting and you could hear the actual slaps and the punches because there was nobody fucking there.
Well,
it also depended on where you were too in the world, because remember in
Florida was more wide open.
Texas,
but you still couldn't go to the hockey games, Ed. Though you still I'm a big Devils fan. I'm from New Jersey, so I'm a big hockey guy.
Half
cardboard fans, man. Cardboard fans.
Half here.
Yeah, you could pay actually. Yeah, you have. But that was eventually though. At first, I remember you were able to I remember there was a point where you can pay to have your face put on a piece of fucking cardboard. Stands.
Baseball.
Talk about Soylent Green, style movie.
Right. Yeah. And it was just it was a dark time for everybody, man. And it's just funny now that here we are 3 years later and we're talking about that stuff and going, oh yeah, that did happen, didn't it?
And it feels like, and like I said, not making light of it to anybody who thinks a certain way, but it's weird now. Right. It's like, I'll ask people, they're like, I'm sick. They're like, did you get tested? And they're like, it's not like before. It was like the plague, and now it's kind of fucking changed a little bit. Like I said, it's a slippery slope, but
it really is.
It's changed in 3 years, hasn't it?
Well, I remember after the fact, when we played that Georgia, the Mass Destruction Fest, that was my first show at Monstrosity, and going through the airport, you had to wear a mask. And I remember one of the guys was like, fuck this. He was a real conspiracy guy. And he's like, I'm not wearing a fucking mask. And they're like, well, dude, get the fuck out of the airport. And it's like, dude, put the mask on. You had to, there were certain times where you had to adhere to whatever they want to call it. They're, whatever. But Now, looking back,
strange times. Strange.
I couldn't imagine.
I got into it. I mean, I was not a big mask guy. I really hated it. I didn't like the way it made me feel. I was angry, I think, about it too. So I look back now and I go, wow, like, why was I so upset about it? Because then eventually we all had to fall in place anyways, because if you didn't wear it, you couldn't go into many stores, I'd be chased out of a store. I mean, eventually I had to, but even my one job I was at, they were like, oh, well, we're letting you go because you're not wearing your mask properly. And I'm like, I'm outside, and they're like, yeah, sorry. So it angered me a little bit, but I mean, I was even the gym at the time where they were closing the gyms and they opened them back up. And you had to wear a mask. Yeah, and I'm on this treadmill, and I'm like, I'm not wearing this mask. And I got into it with one of the employees. Like, we were going to go we were going to knock each other out over it because he was trying to be like the mask police. And I was like, dude, just let me work out, So I do understand, why people felt the way they did about it, and that's fine. I just look back, and I just think it was one of those things where, it just, like you said, it depends on what you believe and what you're, it was just a messed up time. That's all I can say. And I feel stupid. I feel stupid for the way I reacted too about some of it too, but
it was just crazy times. No one, and we're going to get to your new album here in a second. So everybody who's like, I will say it's funny though. And I've noticed this, and my wife's a doctor. She's a child surgeon. So, I mean, I knew all the medical things going on. I was always explained. But it's funny now, whenever I order shit if you order from certain labels or certain companies, you get free masks in your package because they have so many left over because people have stopped ordering them, because it was like everyone was making masks, right? You had sports teams were making masks, right? Everybody was making fucking masks. So now you get packages as long as you get a free mask thrown in because I think it's overstock. But I mean, hey, nobody has the answers. Who knows what the fuck?
Exactly.
But
it's like
crazy times. But, and that actually, which I think – I could be wrong, but that probably has a lot. We're going to go to the new record now, which I think has something to do with some of the material, because I know lyric-wise, you guys cover suicide, dementia, robots, depression, fucking COVID, temptation, everything on this record. We're going to talk about, which is coming out on February 23rd, 2024, which is a couple days away. Whoever's listening to this, it may be out already by then. We have heard the record, me and Ed. It's fucking killer. It's Creation Undone. That will be released by Peaceville again. I mean, yeah. So lyric and concept wise, I'll let you start right there and kind of build on that.
Well, it's like anything else, man. I write, my lyrics are personal. I write about what I believe or what I feel or what I'm going through. Like I was mentioning earlier, you can go back to As Humanity Fades, and that was the time I was going through a really bad divorce, custody battles and stuff like that for all eternity, all that. So I tend to write about, and Eric Greif always taught me this. He goes, write about what you know. Don't write about what you don't know. Write about what you know. So what do I know about? And like with Suffer for Nothing, the main topic of that record was our mortality here on Earth. That's what that record really encompassed. And with us going through the pandemic and just seeing people losing their jobs, and then seeing a lot of people commit suicide. And you were talking about the dementia part. Eric's grandfather went into a real heavy dementia at that time, and it's just something I wanted to write about. Just because I knew his grandfather a little bit. We went out to dinner a couple times, and I got to know him. I thought he was a really great guy, and just to see this happening to him. And it was funny because after it happened, he drove with me we were driving somewhere, and he had no clue who I was. And it was just, wow. I was like, wow, like this is kind of sad. And it upset me to the point where I wanted to write about it. But then also too, like just the other side of it too, the angst and the anger and the depression. I don't tell many people this, but yeah, I went after I lost my first. I lost two jobs over the COVID period, and it got me to the point where I just sat at home. I didn't want to get off my couch. I was scared to go anywhere. Like even traveling, I was scared because I was like, well, is somebody going to tell me I'm not doing this right or doing that right? And it just got to a point where I got so paranoid and scared, I didn't even want to come out of the house. I mean, literally. Like you had to scrape me off the couch. It was just that bad. And so when we were writing the Creation Undone material, I was like, I got to incorporate this into the lyrics, because not only do I want to get it off my chest, but it's a therapy process for me. I don't know if Ed would agree on that, but it's a process, therapy. You're getting it out there.
Yep.
So, yeah. So I just had to write about a lot of the different things, and the Creation Undone part was, ironically, my girlfriend and I were sitting in church, and I saw it, and I was like, huh, that's kind of unique, because that's kind of what I feel right now. I feel like everything that we knew it as of, as we knew it before this happened is like gone. And I kind of felt like the whole world was just kind of unraveling at this point. And I just felt like we were all like spiraling down this tunnel of crap, and just like, how do you get out of this? How do you get out? Like, how do we, as human beings? And the one thing that I have to say about all this is, we're all in it together. We're all in it together. And whether you disagreed or agreed or liked this or didn't like this, so that's all I have to say to people out there is, don't be so judgmental, because we were all in this together. Whether you were on this side of the fence or that side of the fence, it didn't matter. We were still in it together, and we were all going through it, but we were all going through it in our own way. You know what I mean? Like, my experience might not been what Ed's experience was, and his might not be what mine was, but we all went through some kind of I feel it messed us all up mentally. I don't care who you are. I don't care how
it's a hardcore time, man.
Yes.
Well,
I think
and
it all
add in free money, giving people free money changed their perspective on working. So now that put us all behind the curve, because nobody wanted to work. I lost my job too. I was working for Amazon.
Oh, wow.
Self-employed. Like, they paid me to do their stuff, and we couldn't go into people's homes. So they cut us back, and then all of a sudden they're like, yeah, we're going to do it ourselves. So you're not needed anymore. And had that never happened, they may never have gone that route. So I believe me, I was fucking angry too, because I'm like, I was making killer money. Tony knows. I had my own schedule because I work for myself. He was
stripping over at the fucking bar.
I have my own brand of assless chaps we wear backwards. So it's pretty cool. But yeah, I trust me. It's funny because I told you before we came on your song By Design, and that's kind of funny. That's kind of funny because now that it all makes sense, because I've, it was a very weird time, and I'm glad we're out of it. I'm glad we're out of it.
Dave said, it was hard for everybody in different ways, because I had a new baby. I mean, I was having children because I have a 3-year-old and one's going to be a 5-year-old. So if you put the time together, I was just having babies at this time. I had babies late in my life, and my wife was having kids, and all this shit's going on. And of course, for me, man, I'm looking at it like, I don't give a shit about myself. I just worry about my children. And I don't know what the fuck's going on, because there's all this different shit. So it was, and that's, when with the Creation Undone, when I've heard about what the record, it makes a lot of sense, because especially with Morta Skuld, because you guys, if you look at your timeline of your records and with your own personal life of what you've explained in the past, it is a storybook almost. It's like different time patterns, right?
Yeah.
So it makes total sense, and I mean, for like Ed said too, is we all had different experiences with it. I mean, people see one way or the other way, but it affected everybody. Because I know being locked away, I watched family members pass away that I didn't get to see before they passed away, because you couldn't fucking go here, you couldn't go there.
Yeah.
I don't know what's right or wrong. I just know it'll be a sad time period. And and those who didn't experience it, I hope my children never have to know what it was really like besides what I tell them.
Yeah, well, and I feel bad for you as far as the parent thing, because hold on, here, is this thing not working here?
No problem.
Anyways, because for me, I had been estranged from my biological father, never knew him, this and that, and then all of a sudden, I'm getting this phone call, and they're saying hey, you're I'm a lawyer, we're gonna read the will, and you can what is it? Get on Zoom for that. And I was like, what? I'm like, there's nothing in person? And they're like, no, because of the times. And his other son told me he passed away from COVID. And I was like, what? Why didn't somebody tell me? I didn't have any closure. I didn't have any closure. I had no closure. I said, you didn't even tell me the funeral, nothing. Well, I'll take you to where he's buried. And I was just like, screw you, pal. So that kind of angered me too, because I'm like, wow, I had no clue that this guy died, and so yeah. But I think kind of like what you were saying, Tony, is that everybody was affected by it. Everybody, regardless of who you are and what your walk of life is, we were all affected by it, and that we all need to come together at this point and just go, you know what? Hopefully we're past all this crap. Let's move in a positive direction. Let's take it, let's try to get back to kind of where we were, if that's possible.
Yeah, because if you remember, Ed, Dawn of the Dead said at the last episode we did from Nunslaughter, he said opinions are like assholes, which is very true. Everybody has one, but at the end of the day, we all want to find what makes us happy or makes us feel a certain way, and it's a dark time no matter what. And I think that's definitely what this record captures.
Yeah.
And with this album too, you guys had this done in since June. You were offered to put it out in December, but you actually wanted to wait until the new year to kind of enter the freshness of the.
Yeah, it was done. Yeah, recording wise, we were done in June. I'm trying to think how long because it was a weird thing because we started writing like 3 years ago, and then we were writing with Scott had left the band. We were writing with this other guy, Tim, and he was kind of like, he just wrote differently. He liked writing full songs, accompaniments. Here you go, you learn it. And I was kind of like, So I started so it was forcing me to write my own songs and then, here, present it to the band. And we kind of went around for about a year, and he ended up leaving the band, and we were kind of like, is this material really, it was good stuff, but it really wasn't what we would write. So we were like, screw it. So we scrapped everything, including my songs too. Scrapped everything. The only song we kept out of that session was Into Temptation. Only song we kept. And the only reason we kept it was because there's an overdub part in there that Scott does in the beginning of this that I just thought was so creepy and eerie. I'm like, we got to keep this song. So
that's the track about temptations of life, right? That's pretty much like the temptations of Lucille. Okay,
absolutely. So we scrapped everything, kept that one song, and then we just started writing new material at that point, and just kind of started building. And it was weird too, because what happened was Scott came to practice on a day we weren't supposed to practice, and they're like, "Hey, can you come over?" And I was like, "No, I got family stuff, whatever." So Eric and Scott had started the session, and they started writing what became A Painful Conflict. So that's kind of almost, so you had this one song from like a year ago that we kept, and then we started fresh on Painful Conflict, and it just we just started building, the new songs off of that.
And you guys recorded that at Bell City Sound Studios?
Yes. Yeah, with Chris.
Okay, and you guys did a lyric video for that for We Rise, We Fall. And that actually lineup was the same lineup that you had on the Suffer for Nothing record.
Yes.
Okay, so we're actually going to play one of the tracks off this. We're actually going to play the We Rise, We Fall track off the new record, off of Creation Undone, and we'll be right back on the Tampa Morgue after this track. there we go. That was We Rise, We Fall off the new record that will be out on February 23rd, 2024, called Creation Undone. And you guys actually already have, I saw you guys are doing some dates with Malevolent Creation. I'll let you, yeah, you guys, like I said, you guys have some stuff, a couple things planned. So I'll let you go ahead and roll with it. I think you have some dates with Skeletal Earth.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, we're good buddies with those guys. They had asked us a couple months ago, like, hey, we're going to do this West Coast run. And I was like, oh, that's so cool, because we were trying to get out to the West Coast. And of course, now that everything costs like $8 million, I mean, everything's just stupidly overpriced, that like we're having a lot of troubles with people paying for flights and paying for stuff like that. So we weren't able to do the West Coast. And then when Chris from Skeletal is like, hey man, I really want you guys to do this with us. And it's cool because it's their record release run, but by that time our record will be out too. So I thought, oh man, this is a really great opportunity for us to go on the West Coast and play some of the new material. So we're going to do, I think it's 3 California dates and then a Las Vegas date. And then we come home, and then 2 weeks later, we're slotted to go to South America with Malevolent Creation.
Have you guys been to South America before?
No, never.
Wow.
So I
heard that's the place. I heard that is Ed. I heard.
But it's overbooked for like. We were supposed to do like, I don't know, like 10 or 14 shows, and it got scaled back to 8 shows because he's like, well, Mexico doesn't really want you guys. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, it's so oversaturated right now there. Like everybody's touring South America to the point where the promoters just don't have the money to pay everybody. So that's why our tour got scaled down to 8 dates over there.
That's what happened to Monstrosity last year. We originally, Lee's like, we're not going to do it unless we get 14 days. And 14 days went down to 10. So, unfortunately we rolled with the 10 dates, but it was, we call it the sleepless run because you can't drive. It's not like America or Europe where you can drive country to country. Some of that shit is rough terrain. So we were definitely having to fly. So 4:00 lobby calls. I don't know if you guys are going to have to experience that, but 4:00 lobby calls after getting back to the room at 1, you know what I mean?
My God.
Yeah, it was.
Wow. Well, I appreciate you giving me the heads up because, the promoter was like, yeah, you guys are going to be tired.
Who's the promoter?
Weapons of Conquest guy, the Weapons of Conquest, I think it's called. Aldolfo, I think his name.
Oh, Aldolfo. Yeah. So what's going to happen is Aldolfo, you'll be with 3 different people. Generally, you'll be with him probably through Chile and all the way down, through that section. If you do Brazil, you'll be with somebody else, and then if you finish in Colombia, you'll be with Adriana, who's his partner. So that's what we did anyway, and it worked out. I mean, it's just the problem is the language barrier. That's where, because you try to explain to somebody, hey, this is exactly how I need this to go.
Yes.
And this is what we need. And then all of a sudden you get there and it's like, you're going, what happened? You're like, what do you mean? It's like, no, this is what we need. Cause like we got to Colombia and Bogota, and Lee gets on stage, and Lee, it's a drummer. His setup is special. He has to have the double ride, and you can't play the shows. And he saw the drum kit, and they're like, that's it. And Lee's like, he went down there. He's like, dude, we're pulling the plug. And I'm up there, and this place is fucking like, you can't move. And I'm thinking to myself, dude, we're going to get murdered. That's not happening, dude. I said, you sit up here, we'll go play without you. Play a drum track or something. I don't know what to tell you, but I'm not walking out of here without playing. We were like, no fucking way.
This is the time period of tracks.
Yeah. So our guitar player ran down there and found somebody and said, hey, we need this. And they got it. So, I mean, it was delayed 45 minutes.
Wow.
But
yeah, we're doing, it's according to my schedule here.
Aces.
I don't have the venues, but it's
okay.
Bogota, Colombia,
yep.
Ecuador, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 shows in Chile.
Yep. So that's what Adolfo.
and then there's Argentina, and then there's Peru. I think Lima. He said there was like a private show, and I'm like, I don't know what that means, but like,
yeah. So you'll be doing the shows with Adriana and Aldolfo, because for some reason Aldolfo, at least then, he had health issues and he couldn't travel outside of Chile.
Oh, okay.
So, could have been because he was dating some chick. I don't know. You know how that goes. But yeah, but it was nothing went where I would go, I'm never going back. It was pretty flawless. It was pretty flawless for the most part. You'll have fun. I mean, the venues were fucking packed, and you're going with Malevolent. Yeah. You'll have no problems.
That's good, because it's just been, I mean, we've been talking with him for like months and months and months. Yep. And it's like, it gets frustrating sometimes, because we're like, dude, let's go. I'm always messaging him on the WhatsApp and like, what's going on with this? What's going on with that? But and it's funny because that was the first guy I contacted after I talked to this guy, and he sent me over his offer. I was like, I'm going to talk to Lee. I know Lee's been over there way more than I have. So I talked to Lee, and he's like, oh yeah. Cause I get contacted by people all the time, and we've had a couple of guys from South America contact us, and I throw them over to Lee. Lee's like, I have no idea who that is. And then I threw this guy over, and he's like, oh, I've worked with him many times. He's like, he's the shit.
Yep. Cause Lee's worked with him not only with Monstrosity, but he also worked with Terrorizer. So
yeah. Yep.
So, no, you're good hands with that dude. You'll have no problems.
And, I wanted to ask you too, Dave, before, I know we've been here for a while tonight. And we also thank you for your time, because it's, we obviously picked your brain a lot, man. But when was, talk about Eric Reif. We know he passed away a few years ago. When was the last time you talked to Eric?
Man, I feel really bad about this, man. I wish I would have talked to him a lot more than I did, because, he was sick for so many years, and he was just a trooper, man. It was like, 1 minute you're in the hospital getting a toe removed, and then you're getting a finger, and he just bounced back every time. And I just
kidney issues.
Mm-hmm.
Even on the cruise, right? He was having issues then. I think he was having.
Yeah. I didn't. Well, I mean, if we go way back to the Gory Departure days, there was a day when we're in the studio, and he's like a no-show, and we're like, "What? Where is this?" He a no-show. Back then you didn't have cell phones, so we were like half a day in the studio, and we get a call from him, and he's like, dude, he with his diabetes acted up real bad. He ended up in the hospital. So, so this goes way back. Yeah. But yeah, in the last recent years, I really regret not going to see him. I always wanted to fly out to Canada and hang out with him, and I didn't. But we would Facebook message back and forth quite a bit. And I'd probably say about 3-4 months before he passed, I think we were just kind of nonchalantly talking, and I wish I would have reached out to him, because I feel bad, because he was one of 3 people in my life, which is the reason why I became a musician, and he's a very, very important one of those 3 people.
Oh, cool. I totally understand.
Yeah, he did a lot for me too, man. Because
right,
I mean, he. I mean, it's no secret he financially helped Massacre get restarted. I mean, our first shows were in Canada.
Sure.
So it was, he was very cool and did a lot for us. He was a manager. He was our lawyer. So
yeah, we went in last May, we were out with Massacre for like a week and a half.
Yeah, it's crazy. 2021, Eric passes. Time's just flying. I mean, it's just,
right.
So, we're going to, basically, we'll ask you where we can find, obviously the new album is out on the 23rd. But you guys also did a new video, right? You guys did For Perfect Prey?
Uh-huh.
When is that out?
That's going to be out on February 20th.
February 20th. So what the hell's the date? So that's out in 3 days. So
I think Tuesday. Yeah. Tuesday, so yeah, we're going to do like right now, I just put up stuff on like the reels and just like a snippet. So just kind of like a preview of what it's going to be. And then on the 20th, the full video will come out on the 20th.
Okay, 20th. And Dave, you actually worked at venues, right? You actually worked with, what was it? You worked with artists, like at a venue outside. So I have to ask you, because we've had a few people on it. We had a security guard that worked at Atlantic City, man. We got some fucking great stories from him. who is that? So who's the biggest douchebag you've ever dealt with dealing with bands? Because I've done the same. I worked over in St. Pete at some venues. I booked shows, and I mean, and who is one of the coolest people that you wouldn't expect that you've dealt with?
Oh man, damn! I work for too many. I'd say the biggest douchebag, the rappers. Like I did a lot of rap shows, and they're like most of those guys are awful. The Public Enemy guys were really nice, but like I can't think of the guy's name. The Wu-Tang, the lead guy, he was doing his solo stuff, and that guy was a complete douche to me. Like I want to say I think he even pulled a gun on me or something like that.
Holy
He
shit.
was a complete asshole. The whole crew was just assholes. As far as the nicest, coolest, John Mayer.
Really?
Okay. I was a production assistant at the rave, Milwaukee Youth Club, and he was playing the ballroom, and then no bullshit, 6 months later, he was playing arenas. That's like how quick but he was just the nicest guy. He's like 6 foot something, and I had this little Ford 90 something Ford Probe that sits real low to the ground, and it's not very big, and he didn't complain one bit. He thanked me the whole time that I picked him up for the airport, and just he at the time, super nice, down to earth guy. The guys in Seven Dust too. Those guys were super, super, super nice. You know, they didn't know me from Adam, and they're just like, "Yeah, come on in, have a beer, whatever you want. You want some food? We'll get you." You know, so.
You go.
Good to hear.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, that's definitely cool, man. And anybody who wants to, anything, obviously find anything Morta Skuld, merchandise. I know you guys have an Instagram and all that, but I'll let you do the whole whore yourself out deal.
Facebook. What is it? Facebook /Morta Skuld. The Instagram Morta Skuld 1 official. There's several Bandcamp pages. I don't know why Peaceful does this, but every time we release a record, they start a Bandcamp page for it. I don't know why. There is a Bandcamp page that is just ours, and it's got the Surface record on it. So when you click on it and you see the Surface album, that is our direct Bandcamp page. And if you go under the merch tab, that's where we have all our shirts available. So if you want to buy shirts, also if people want to buy shirts, Season of Mist. I know that they've got a European version and then a US version for shirts for us too. I go through them as well. Otherwise, peacevillerecords.com, theburningshed.com if you want to pre-order the record, or if you want to get some of the back catalog, you can always go to peacevillerecords.com as well.
You always had a really good relationship with Peaceville, huh? Did you deal with Paul at first?
Yeah.
Peaceville?
Yeah. Yeah, I have been. It's funny. I've been talking to him since the early 2000s, and like I said, we kind of got into it with the whole 9mm thing, and I'm like, oh man, forget you, Paul, and all that, and then it just kind of I don't know, we just kind of started really getting down to earth with each other, and then when we were in the UK Death Fest, I met him for the first time, and so that was really cool, and I feel bad I didn't get to talk to him more, but the guy from Cancer was chewing his ear. And I was like, come on, man, it's my turn. I want to get in there. But unfortunately, he was chewing his ear too much. I really didn't get to talk to him too much. So I'm hoping we get to meet again. But yeah, he's always been real straight up with us. A lot of people ask, well, how's the label treat you? How does this and that? I says, they're not like a big, big label, but they're not real small either. And the thing that I like about being on the label is even though we're, contracted or we're a signed act, if we want to go out and do something outside of the norm or outside the realm of being signed, they're usually fine with it. If we want to print up T-shirts or something, we don't have to ask permission. If we want to use some artwork, they're just like really kind of almost like a do-it-yourself kind of still a little bit, but on a little bit of a different level. So, and they, like I said, I always have a really good rapport with him. He's always been straight up with me, and I've always been straight up with him. And that's why I wanted to come back to Peaceville, was because I felt like the first 3 records was like, okay, we kind of built our following on this label, and I kind of want to come back to it. So it's kind of like a coming home feeling. But like I said, him and I have been talking for years before that.
That new record cover, the new artwork. No, that was what they bought an illustrator and a painter for that. Because who did that album cover actually?
So this has been getting a lot of controversy because of the the artwork situation now that we're all going, everybody's going through. And it's funny you say, because Matt Bishop. So we were looking for a cover. I couldn't. I was I looked at Ed Ripka. I looked at Travis Smith. I looked at all these guys that I really liked their artwork, and we just didn't have the budget. We just did not have the budget. So Matt and I are good friends, and Matt knew how frustrated I was. And he's like, "Hey, man, I bought a couple pieces off this guy a year ago, and I don't think I'm going to use them for my band." So he goes, so he gave me a piece. He goes, "Here, you can have this piece." And we looked at it, and we're like, "Oh, okay, well, it's kind of cool." And I submitted it to the label, and the label was like, "Hey, man, is this AI?" Which, of course, is the big controversy now. It's all over the internet. It's getting kind of ridiculous. And I'm like, "Oh, well, I didn't know that. I didn't know that." So long story short, he's like, "Well, I like the concept of it because it kind of reminds us of the Dying Remains record a little bit. So what we want to do is we want to hire an illustrator and we want to hire a painter. And we want to redo it to give it more of that human feel and kind of make it stand out. Because I could show you the original versus what it is, and you'd be like, "Oh yeah, you can really see the difference." So I know that there's a lot of people out there right now kind of slamming us for the cover, and that's kind of seems to be a controversy right now with Deicide and the Kerry King thing and all
I've
this
seen
other
that a lot
stuff.
this week, actually. Yeah.
Well, like I said, dude, Death puts out a pink shirt with a cat on it, and people are like throwing Chuck under the bus and throwing his family under the bus for something so stupid. It's like, I just look at it this way: if you don't like the cover, listen to the music, and if you don't like it,
Look at Morbid Saint, dude. They were telling, like what Pat was telling us in gym, that they had Ed Repka do their cover, and people are still bitching about it.
Is that why?
Yeah, because people are thinking doesn't fit or something like that, and they're like, you can't do anything right. You think about it, if you get Ed Repka to do your album cover, you think you're doing pretty fucking well, right?
You would think.
It's a pretty,
it's funny. I was just talking to Jim. I asked him, "Who did your cover? Was it Ed?" And he hasn't responded yet. So I appreciate you telling me, because that's what it did look. I wish we could have afforded. I mean, the guy's he's not cheap, but we did hire. Like I said, the label hired 2 people. I even think me and Paul were talking about it. And he's like, "Dude, they worked on this for like 40 plus hours." So like I said, we've had a lot of negative comments about it. And it's unfortunate because some people are really just don't want to let it go. But it wasn't something we intentionally did. It wasn't something we were like, "Hey, let's do this because we want to piss people off," or whatever. It just so happened that Matt had a piece. He gifted it to me, nice enough to do that. And the label was like, "We like it, but we don't love it, and we want to do this to it, and we want to give it a human feel." And so that's kind of where we're at with that. But I love the cover. I think it turned out great. I just wish people would just kind of like, we were talking before with the COVID thing and how it affected everybody. And it's kind of like, well, what happened to let's agree to disagree and just move about your
Everybody's
business.
a fucking critic.
How about keep your comments to yourself? Yeah. If you don't like it, don't look at it.
It's the world we live in.
Exactly. So, but yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up because, like I said, I'm always really leery to talk about that because I don't know if like people are going to be on my front lawn today or what's going to happen because there's a couple people online that are really they're just not letting this go, man. It's like every post I put up, they're just like right there. Even on YouTube.
Those people don't buy the records. They're not the ones who. I guarantee you, 99% of the people who talk shit, they don't actually pick up the band's records. They just. It's just
I'll go a step further. They're not coming out of their house because they're little shriveled up dicks who fucking couldn't fight their way out of a wet paper bag. Because I can promise you this, go ahead, Tony, say it, the angry Ed. But I've listened to this shit for years, and I've told a numerous amount of people, you can find me. You can find me. Come find me. They don't because they know what would happen because all they do is they're just the fucking guys talking shit online who would never say it to you. Yeah. I've had people over the years talk shit. And when I see him at a show, I'm like, what happened? Where's your one guy told me he's going to hit me with a bat. I'm like, where's your bat, bro? I never said that. So it's like they talk And when you confront them, they're like, "Oh, never, that was not me,"
Yeah.
because that's how it works. So fuck, who gives a shit? Do you like the if
Right.
you like the album cover? That's all that matters because
Right.
you made it for
Right.
you, not for anybody
Right.
else.
And now you see why Ed doesn't write fortune cookie slogans.
I could though.
Well,
I could write
well,
rap too if you want.
Well, we were even accused of stealing, like
Oh,
somebody. I'm like, dude, what? Like, I first of all, I just want to say it out on the record. I don't have an AI generator. I don't even know what it looks like. I don't know how to use it. I don't know anything.
I didn't know what AI was till a couple months ago.
Listen,
People explained to me what the
I'll
fuck
be
was going
honest
on.
with you. I just as a fucking joke, I went in because I heard this band was using AI lyrics, and I'm like, no way.
Oh wow!
So I went in, and there's an AI generator, and I said, write me a death metal song about this. And if I sent you the lyrics, dude, you would laugh.
Yeah.
You would go, that is the most cheese dick shit I've ever read in my life. Because it was, they tried to be brutal without the brutal. Like they tried to just structure stuff that meant no sense. Like, and you know, or I said, write me a song about the end of the world, death metal style. And when I read it, I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't write that. That's not even close to anything I would write.
It's well, and you know, the thing is too, is I think with the art going the way it's going and stuff like that, I guarantee you 2 or 3 years, this probably isn't going to be a topic anymore. You know?
No, I think you're right. And I've said, I mean, personally, I've said all along, yeah, I'm always going to use an artist because I'm fucking getting old and I've always used artists and I love the whole, like their perspective on things, but you're right. Yeah. And in about 20 years, we're going to be the unpopular opinion on that because it's going to be like, what, you don't use AI, which I personally, I never will, but that's going to be the thing. Like the youth is going to take over and it's just how it goes. I see people making fun of fucking Slayer and shit on like line now. 20 years ago, you would never have that. It's just a different world, a different generation.
It's laziness. It's laziness.
Well, here's the thing: is what most are saying is that you're taking work away from like real artists, but at the same time, how many bands out there are using a drum machine on their record? So then you're taking away work from drummers. Then you know what I mean? You could argue about it all day long, but the thing is. And like I said, I know this is a very sensitive subject for us because of just some of the backlash, but we actually hired 2 actual people to work on this piece. So
an illustrator and a painter. I mean, that's...
Yeah, I got their names right here. It's, matter of fact, the painting is Daniel Masek. I don't know how to pronounce that, at Pixel Core. And then Paul G plus Cover Digital. So, I mean, there's like, you know, like I said, it wasn't our intention. I wish people could just kind of move past it, but you know, it is what it is.
It's the world we live in. But yeah, no,
yes,
I mean, like I said, we've both heard the record, man. It's killer, you know, and yeah, I mean, we appreciate you coming on and you know.
As I told you, I don't like a lot of new shit, but
that's a grumpy bitch.
I found myself like in the gym today, and I was like. Song after song was just like, what the fuck? And then my phone auto connects to my truck and I forget what song came on, but then By Design came on and my son was like, that's heavy. And I'm like, nice. And then the harmonies, like I told you, and I said, that's how you write a fucking riff. Like that's how songs are structured. And then it repeated to song, you know, and I'm like, this is how you write. This is death metal to me. To me, this is what old school, straight up, death metal is supposed to be. Not, you know, I don't know, some of the new stuff that's these new kids come up with. I'm like, you're just regurgitating shit that you have no idea because you weren't around.
I think the problem too is, and Dave, you might agree with us about this, there's so many bands, like everything is so accessible now. Like back then you would have to order a tape or trade a tape or go pick up a record. Now, I mean, I could say, hey, I want to hear any Morta Skuld record. I just got to pick up my phone and it takes me 2 seconds to get to a track.
Well, it's oversaturated too. There's like, what was the figure? There's like 2 million bands, like versus like 20 years ago there like was maybe a half. Now it's like doubling. And I'm not trying to say everybody doesn't have their day or anything like that, you know, but it's getting to the point where it's like so oversaturated. I think that the fans truly sometimes like you can't find that diamond in the rough sometimes, and sometimes it'll You know, you might just gloss right over it because it's you know, there's just it's like going into a restaurant and you look at the menu and go, oh my God, I don't know what I want because there's just too much to choose
Right.
from.
Perfect.
And we're in a time
analogy.
of the super groups now, you know, where you got to have like one guy from this band and everybody loves that fucking band. There might be 20,000 other bands that are just as better, but no one gives a shit.
Well, and on top of that, you got.
And I come from
like
a failing local band, so I've been doing it for over 20 years, so I can stand in this and put my thumbs up and say, hey, this is how it works, man. You know, I'm not putting down, I'm just being honest as you see.
No, I know, but I'm looking at bands like Morta Skuld, Morbid Saint, because they said the same thing. We get overlooked. And I'm thinking, I see these tours with these kids that haven't been playing for 2 years, and they're getting on a gigantic tour.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why would you overlook the dudes that have been here that if it weren't for you or Morbid Saint or whatever,
right,
they wouldn't exist because without that the blueprint, they're not figuring that shit out. I can promise you.
Right. Well,
look what Jim said from Morbid Saint. Morbid Saint, he said we didn't get the Spectrum of Death record didn't get popular until 2010. He's like, he didn't know. Right. They were like shocked that all of a sudden they're like you know, it's like holy shit. Yeah, it's like when they couldn't sell it when they put it out. They said.
Yeah, we had like we were at Milwaukee Metal Fest this last year and. We had a couple of the younger bands that are like pretty freaking big, and they all said the same thing, and I was just like, what? They were like, dude, your record Dying Remains is the reason why we either started playing or we either became a band or whatever, and it was just humbling as shit for me because I was like, are you kidding me? You're on tour with Obituary. I can't even get Obituary to pick up the phone for me, dude. And you guys are out with them and you're telling me I influenced you, you know? So
it's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. And I mean, I tell people the same thing. I feel like we still, even though after 32 years of doing this, I feel like I still struggle. I feel like it's still, you know
what you need? A Diamond Head situation. You need a Diamond Head situation. You need look at Diamond Head. Metallica covered them. They bought houses off those covers.
Well, you know, we had there's a band from Canada. I can't remember. They're a newer band, but he started another band. He's calling it Dying Remains. And then there's another guy that we were on the road and was like, hey man, here's my logo, Hatred Creation, which is a song off of Dying Remains. So I'm like, okay, you know, it's kind of weird seeing his band though, Dying Remains, knowing that, you know, we wrote Dying Remains, and then I'm
right.
Like, but I mean, hey, to each their own, and maybe that'll help us. Who knows?
No, you never know, man. But hey, like I said, we look forward to you giving us your time. And
thank you guys so much. It was my pleasure. Trust me, my pleasure. No. And go, you know, send me a friend's request for both of you guys on Facebook, and we'll hook up.
Definitely, man. And we'll
so we can still stay in touch.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we'll talk to you before when we end this show too. Okay. Say goodbye to you on the way out. And Ed, we have on Tuesday, we have Kyle Thomas from X Order coming on, which definitely looking forward to that. Yeah. We're talk some Slaughter in the Vatican and the Law and the new album they have coming out. So anybody wants to go back. Last 2 weeks ago, we did Dawn of the Dead from Nunslaughter. Definitely recommend that episode. A lot of killer old stories. A lot of, it's a great conversation. I mean, and again,
most of them. We went through our thing, just me and you talking, not on the podcast, but we were like, Jesus Christ, man! If you go through the guests we've had, from the Vince Crowleys to the Pat from Hell Witch, and you talk,
Blaine from Accused, and
Carl from the Rods, and then Morbid Saint dudes. I mean, we've just Dave Austin. I mean, we've had some it's like you learn so much history from these people.
Sure.
And that's kind of like today. I mean, people who didn't know who Morta Skuld were, they're going to know now, because
awesome.
That was the idea, is people need to know who these people are and who the bands are, because you'll never find that out from asking what kind of toppings you like on your pizza. That's not going to, so.
We know Dave likes beer, so we don't have to.
Yes, we got that. We've got that.
Oh, yeah.
And passing out on the front lawn as a kid, so we got all that.
Yeah, exactly. Many times.
But, and anybody who listens to us, you can always find us where, Ed, do your spiel.
Fuck. Can I just put a thing up?
Dance, monkey, dance.
Apple. Ding, 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 ding. Apple, Spotify, Amazon. We're on Facebook, but it sucks. Instagram, and then thetampamorgue@gmail.com.
Yes.
And YouTube.
TampaMorgue@gmail.com.
Oh yeah, we're on
Yes.
YouTube too. We're on YouTube.
Instagram is our most
Yes.
active. And YouTube. And so check us out. We appreciate everybody who listens more than you know. And we have some stuff coming up this month. We're just getting, we don't announce it until it's confirmed 100%. And everyone, thanks for listening to the Tampa Morgue. Thanks, Dave Gregor. We really appreciate it, dude. New album out on February 23rd, which will be a couple days away on Peaceville Records, Creation Undone. And everyone, thanks again for listening. And we will see you in a couple days with Kyle Thomas from X-Order on the Tampa Morgue.
See ya.